And of course, it's truly an honor to have Tracy Twyman. She's one of my favorite peeps out there when it comes to cutting edge insights and just deep thinking and all that. Unfortunately, Tracy's having little archons in her video, but she is with us in audio. How are you doing tonight, Tracy?
I'm doing all right. Thank you very much for having me on. I didn't know you guys had this deal going, but it sounds like a good idea. I think that would work great. You know, I guess it already has been. So congratulations.
Oh, thanks. Yes. And of course, it's sort of a live video, more informal, friendly, riffing, talking about stuff that's going on today. But of course, it'll be out on all the Aeon Byte channels, iTunes, and so forth. And of course, wherever Alex wants to put this heresy himself. So it's a good deal. And we have people there in the chat. So maybe there'll be some questions for us. I've got to sort of pull this out because the chat always changes on YouTube. Never know what's going to be this week. So Tracy, tell us how you've been. One of the emails I get often, very often, is what has happened to Tracy Twyman? And sometimes I think, well, maybe she had the same fate as Paul and the real and this is not the real Tracy, but you are the real Tracy. What have you been up to?
By Paul, you mean McCartney?
Yes. I still love that one. Paul is dead conspiracy. I can't let it go.
Well, so far, only one person has accused me of being a clone or a replacement. So as far as I'm aware, I'm still me, and I've still been here. There was just a couple months where I had taken my website down and the YouTube channel I used to have because of, as I've explained, on other shows, so I won't get into too much of it, but I got hacked, I got death threatened, and I thought my website might be compromised, so I had to take it down and start a new one. And I'm still in the process of trying to get all my old material back up on the new website, because I'm actually really shocked to realize just how many reams of stuff I've written and videos I've produced. And it's like, I can't believe when I got rid of, about 20 years worth of stuff all at once, and now I'm going back to try to find the best stuff to put it back. There's tons of stuff. It's so much, and it's a lot of work. So I don't know. I hope I can get it all up there, but I know there's some things that are kind of lost forever. Anyway, I'm doing all right. I'm doing some new stuff too. And I thank all those people for being concerned about me. You can usually always find what I'm doing now just by Googling my name. So I'm usually, if I really did disappear, you ought to wait like more than a couple months before you really worry about me being dead, because sometimes I do just take some time to do some research. I'm not always tweeting and stuff like that. So
Yes. You have a life to do to bring that good content out. Well, that's awesome. So again, we want to try to keep with today's standards and what's going on. So Tracy, just from what you've seen lately, it seems, what do you think about this whole Saudi Arabia pivot? I mean, this seems to be very strange in so many ways, how Saudi Arabia suddenly turned into sort of a boogeyman, even though they are been sort of the shadow government of this country. But what's your hot take on this?
I wish I had a lot to add here. I actually, I've been not paying too much attention to the news lately, so I don't really know what you guys are talking about there. What's the Saudi Arabia pivot?
Well, like the journalist was killed, and it seems suddenly this country who's basically gotten away with literally murder, this country that's deeply embedded with the United States, I mean, from 9/11 to before. And it suddenly seems the PR has gone bad. And usually that tells us, as some have said, it usually means a war in heaven with different factions. So I'm trying to just untangle this. What about you, Alex? What do you think of this?
Yeah, that Saudi stuff, it's... I know Tracy mentioned something about it a while back. I think it was like a Ouija board session. I think you were talking to Prince, right, Tracy? I think about the Saudis and how they like infested the entertainment system.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. What are you gonna say about it? You got more to say.
summarize what you're talking about quickly, Prince, supposedly, the spirit identifying himself as that, did speak to me and a friend on the Ouija board and said that Saudi gangsters, basically a Saudi cartel, was running the American entertainment industry and was responsible for the deaths of Prince and several other people. But so fill me in, guys. Like, is the president saying a lot of things about Saudi Arabia right now, or is it the news media, or both?
Oh, it's kind of like both. The media wants Trump to denounce Saudi Arabia, and Trump is doing his usual, I guess, the trickster archetype. He keeps talking about, well, it's going to cost us a lot of money and we do business with them and all that. And it sounds horrible, but in a way, he's doing what he does best. So he's exposing what every other president has done, was go to bat for Saudi Arabia, cover for Saudi Arabia, and just tell the truth that we have been, we've been selling them arms. We've both Saudi Arabia, United States, and Israel have been this like triangle of exporting terror and war across the Middle East and beyond. So that's kind of what's going on. And of course, different factions from both the right and left are sort of like clutching their pearls, because this is offensive, whatever side you want to take. But it's interesting thing, because like it keeps exposing how corrupt and evil we've been for so long.
So the president had previously tried to indicate that he knew who the good guys and the bad guys were over there, and he's friends with the current administration, and he was supporting the house cleaning that he supposedly was doing, where he had the people imprisoned in the hotel. And I think some of those people are still there. Mm-hmm. That's what I've heard, but I don't know much more about the story beyond that. So
yeah, I think it's the CIA has said that the prince himself was involved in the killing of the journalists. So of course, everybody's up in arms, but how do you trust the CIA? So it's a big shit show, and it's just the way I see it exposes more of the whole corrupt underbelly, how deep Saudi Arabia is embedded with the deep state here in the United States. So you're probably not missing much.
I certainly don't see us invading anytime. I mean, it's kind of a proxy. It's, I consider it kind of an extension of the United States government in a way, or at least parts of it, So I really don't see them being a military, a conflict between us and them anytime soon. Wouldn't you agree?
No. I don't even know where this could even go. It's just, again, it's a very strange one. And another thing I've wanted to ask you too, before we get into some of your work, is the idea of QAnon. I mean, I know my wife, who is very much enthralled by the whole QAnon thing. I tend to lean towards it being more some sort of intelligence force that's sending out misinformation and so forth. But what do you think, Tracy? I mean, I know you told me to ask you about Isaac Kappy.
Yeah. Okay. So I've been watching the QAnon stuff kind of off and on, but since the beginning. And early on, I came up with some theories about just some aspects of what he was talking about, just because it seemed like it was actually aimed at me, frankly. Like he was hinting at things that only I had written about recently at that time. I was writing about hidden hyperspace kingdoms, the idea that the elite might have some kind of some spaces where they keep properties that you can't even see, using your eyes, like they're using special technology to hide these locations. And I had a lot of reasons to think that in the things that I had written. And then there were hints about this in some of the early QAnon material. And then he's come back to it repeatedly throughout the months. So I honestly was thinking, whoever this person is, they're putting out lots of different clues, and they're trying to have it match up with other stories, other information that's out there right now, and that some of my hyperspace material was part of that. And so I'm not saying, QAnon is all about me or anything, but there was an aspect, there were a few messages he put out that frankly were meant to go along with things that I had put out, and I think were meant to get my attention. And then after saying this in public, someone pointed out to me that, for instance, the cover of the Baphomet book that Alex and I wrote, a picture of that was posted by one of the not QAnon himself, but there's several others that are like connected to him, And so they put out a picture of our book. They referred to a secret battle going on between Keck supporters and worshipers of myth, which they identified those people as worshipers of Mithras. And then there's a battle going on between those people and worshipers of Baal. So anyway, it seemed like whoever I agree, they're trolls, but I actually think they're connected to the administration. So it's just it's a intelligence op coming from the president. And they were trying to inject this as part of the narrative. And I just am watching, and trying not to get sucked in or take the bait. I don't want to be used by anyone. But of course, I'm interested that they're, dropping hints that are meant for me. But so anyway, the QAnon stuff then came up with the people that were hacking me and attacking me this summer. They kept sending threatening and insulting messages indicating that I'm part of the QAnon group. I'm promoting it, and as though I care about Donald Trump and I'm part of that whole movement, and then attacking me for being that, which I'm not, But anyway, you could tell like I had been identified as a target by, I think, they seem to be like Hillary shillbots and people working for left-wing causes. So I don't know. I can't tell what the agenda was there. But then the Isaac Cappy comes up. That subject comes up because this guy came out, 2 or 3 months ago, claimed to be friends with Seth Green and had observed things that led him to indicate that, or led him to believe that Seth Green is a pedophile and guilty of Pizzagate type stuff. I'll just leave it at that. And he did an interview with Alex Jones. He's done several interviews talking about this. So this is what he's known for now, rather than the few bit parts he's done as an actor. So I contacted him. I started chit-chatting with him. I noticed right away there's something weird about him, but I'm not putting him down or saying that he's an agent necessarily. I'm not going to claim anything like that necessarily, but there's some weird things that stand out. I mean, obviously he's got this actor personality, if you've ever been friends with actors or met anyone, they just have this kind of way of, they're always on camera, they're always acting like they're in a show or something. So he's got this personality that's just very odd for a whistleblower. And then when I was exchanging information with him, because he's presenting himself as someone who's trying to start a movement, and he says, come to me with your stories of victimization, and I will help you get those stories out. And I was just telling him about the hack attacks and how I had found some what looked like child trafficking on YouTube and Instagram. That's how this whole thing started for me this summer. So I was telling him the story. I was showing him some of the messages, the threatening messages I got. Some of them had codes in them, and I was just asking him, since you're an actor, some of them had codes about Hollywood, and I was just saying, do you recognize any of these codes? You know what they're talking about? he seemed amazingly disinterested in anything I was saying. He didn't ask any follow-up questions. And here's the weirdest thing. Someone pointed out to me after I'd been talking to this guy for 2 or 3 days, they said, hey, have you ever noticed that Isaac Cappy, when he first came out on Twitter talking about this stuff, the email address he told people to write to was +ultra17 at, I think, Gmail or something, which is very odd because, you know, there's not a lot of people using this term. I've used it repeatedly throughout my career, and then I've used it for my website most recently. So I was already doing that when QAnon came out. And the plus ultra concept is about this hidden hyperspace kingdom idea. So the messages in QAnon that I felt were referencing my material mentioned plus ultra, said that plus ultra is a secret society that that Donald Trump is a member of. And then it went into stuff about him and time travel and his uncle, who was a nuclear scientist, and trying to indicate, okay, that plus ultra is a real thing and that it's the same secret society that was portrayed in the movie Tomorrowland that was put out by Disney recently, or in the last few years, and had George Clooney in it. And that was about a hidden hyperspace kingdom where chosen elite scientists and intellectuals and artists are invited to go so that they can escape the kind of anti-intellectual world of modern times. And it's like going into the future, literally. You go into this place where there's a higher technology and you're around people that are on your same level, I guess is the idea. Anyway, so that's the way it was portrayed in this movie put out by Disney. There was also a game that was put out before the movie came out, and it was a role-playing game, and it had all this stuff about the secret society in it. And it even said that they were kidnapping kids for benign purposes, supposedly, to induct them into the society. But that they would kidnap them at Disneyland on the It's a Small World ride. That they would identify kids they were going to kidnap who were geniuses, and they wanted to have them. And so they put a special pin on these guys when they came into Disneyland. And then as they're going through It's a Small World, there's a little laser light that will scan them. And if they're wearing the pin, it will cause a trap door to open up, and they go right into the plus ultra world, the Tomorrowland. So anyway, that's in the game that was obviously put out to promote the movie. Came out later. There's a scene of this happening in the movie too, but they don't go into an elaborate explanation of why it's happening. But it's a part of the movie too. So anyway, you've got this idea that's in the movie, and then you've got QAnon referencing it. I had already picked up on the symbolism of it, and it ties into Ayn Rand and what is it? This, not the Fountainhead, but the second one. Atlas Shrugged is all about the same concept. So anyway, to tie in Isaac Cappy, all I know is that he was using this email address for unknown reasons. I guess plus ultra 17. Okay, 17 is Q is the 17th letter of the alphabet, so that's why that number is in there, I suppose. And maybe he was just a big QAnon fan, and he saw QAnon talk about plus ultra. And, maybe he just got into the whole idea. He spelled it with a V, from the Latin alphabet. So instead of the U, there was a V in both words. And so anyway, I mentioned this to Isaac Cappy in a Twitter exchange, a private message exchange. I just said, hey, some people are writing to me. They were basically accusing me of being part of a conspiracy, I guess, with Isaac Cappy. They were like, hey, how come you guys are both using this term? And he has V's instead of U's. And that's just like NXIVM, you know, that's just like the NXIVM cult, and they're doing child trafficking. Is that what you guys are doing? And I'm like, hey, I don't know Isaac Kappy. I didn't know that was his email, you know? So anyway, I mentioned this to him and just say, people are accusing me of this. And then I mentioned to him too, like, hey, I've been using this term forever. It's nothing new to me, and it has nothing to do with Donald Trump. And I didn't ask him, why are you using it? But I certainly invited him. Like it would have been natural for him to respond by explaining why he was using it, but he never did. I didn't follow up on it because at this point I felt like, okay, there's really something weird going on. Why isn't he addressing what I said, you know? And so I backed off, and I've left him alone. He subsequently got involved with this guy named Vegan Mikey, who's claiming that he knows about trafficking going on in my neck of the woods over here, Voodoo Donuts in Portland. He says that that's one of the safe houses. That's where they're kidnapping kids, and the owners are having parties and doing things with kids. And so anyway, Isaac Kappy was integral in outing Vegan Mikey's claims, him and this other show called Lift the Veil that's on YouTube. And again, okay, I'm just telling you what I know. I don't know anything beyond that. There's another fellow on YouTube now claiming that Cappy and Mikey, and he kind of throws dirt also on Lift the Veil, but it doesn't sound like he really has a lot of proof of it. But he does claim that Cappy and Mikey are both connected to this film company called Troma that is itself connected to the people that run Voodoo Donuts, also connected to Comet Ping Pong, and this other fellow named Lloyd Kaufman, who's hangs out with Tony Podesta and makes pedo jokes on Twitter all the time. So long story short, I guess, it does seem like there's reason to wonder if Isaac Kappy and Vegan Mikey are both part of some kind of LARP that's meant to, you know, disrupt whatever you would call, you know, the Pizzagate truther movement on YouTube and stuff. And it's very difficult to tell with this whole thing, really. Okay, QAnon, Pizzagate, and then what I just described, all this stuff is, it's like they're people from the very groups that are being accused are coming out to put this narrative out there of, you know, all of this crime and blackmail, and it's linked to Hillary and all this. And yet, you know, they themselves seem very fishy. And what results from it is everybody accusing everyone else of being an agent, and nobody knows who to trust on YouTube when they talk about this. And yet when you look at the information these guys are putting out, it's like, well, they're pointing out some interesting things. Voodoo Donuts, the stuff that they pointed out there, is relevant. You know, it all hangs together in the same narrative. But if you doubt the narrative itself, or you think that a film company working, you know, in conjunction with an intelligence agency or in conjunction with the Clintons or something, that they might have been the ones to put this together in the first place, then of course it's all going to make sense internally if they wrote the story in the first place, right? So if they took known symbols that were associated with pedophiles, according to the FBI, and they decided, let's write a story that includes all these things. I know from experience that it's very easy once you start, you decide a set of symbols and what they mean, and then you come up with a story to use it. You can do it, and you can use it. You can use people that are real. You can use real life the real current events, real history, and twist it all into a fictional narrative that will hang together as long as every part of the story references the same cast of characters and the same set of symbols. So I don't know what's going on here, but something is going on. It does involve the entertainment industry. It involves intelligence agencies, and it involves high-level politicians like the Clintons. And I don't know what the role is of the Trump people, but I don't trust them either, So it's just like we're all caught in this shitstorm, and we don't know what the motivation is of anybody, but and we don't know where it's leading, but we know that it's shit. I'm sorry to swear, but I mean, we know that it's not reality. We're being sucked into some false reality, and I don't even know how to stop it. Like, I don't know what to do as a researcher and journalist to get the truth at this point. And there's no way to extricate myself from it anymore, I don't think, or anyone else who's worked on it. Like, you'll always be stuck with this. It's like a tar baby. It just, you get stuck to it as soon as you touch it. So I don't know. I wanted to tell you guys about Isaac Kappy Plus Ultra and how he had nothing to say about that. And I'd love to hear someone else explain, or I'd love to hear him explain why he was using that. And I don't know, but I guess that's all I have to say about it. We'll probably never know because these guys are just going to keep lying.
Yeah, and of course, like you said, once they throw out the esoteric and the symbolism, it just becomes a rabbit hole. I mean, I think you mentioned the number 17, and did you? Because yeah, that's interesting, and I know you're onto something because oddly enough, this morning I was doing some work, and my wife, she's like one of those people who has visions and she sees the shadow people. She walked in and she told me, beware of the number 17, and just walked out of the room. And I'm
really?
Like, it's one of her warnings that's Tommy's spoken. So you mentioning definitely tells me there's we're going the right path, or what you said has a lot of validity. So it's a matter of following it. So what do you think, Alex? What do you think of this? Or do you have a question for Tracy?
Yeah, I think Tracy and I talked about Trump's connections to Plus Ultra. I think, didn't we? I think it was last year.
Yes.
I was actually really proud of that episode. Well, I mean, not that I'm not proud of all the other stuff, but I really like that one. But Trump, he has a mansion called Mar-a-Lago in Florida. Yeah, Mar-a-Lago in Florida. And I think people who go there, I think are celebrities, mostly celebrities and politicians. They have to pay like $75,000 a year just to be a member of that club. But if you go to that Mar-a-Lago mansion, they have all this symbolism of, like, I mean, you see this everywhere. Well, in a lot of mansions, but you see the lions as guardians or gatekeepers of their little secret society mansion, celebrity mansion, or whatever that is.
Yeah.
So, and then when you think about it, the lion, kind of connects to a lot of different things, including the demiurge, if you want to call it that. And I don't know. I think, doesn't the lion connect to Mithras in some way?
Yeah, it's one of the highest grades.
Right.
Yeah.
Pater, right? Or Pater.
Yeah, and then there's two lions that always carry Cybele or Kybele. They either pull her train, or sometimes they're connected like cat dog in one body.
Yeah, and so I think Trump, I think he's somehow connected to that as well, because I know Miguel and I were talking about Trump. Not only is he channeling some sort of tricks or archetype, but he's also talking about Trump's connection with Mercury in the last episode, right? And Mercury, he's known as the being that reveals the secrets, right, to the magician.
The
But
mystagogue.
he's also, yeah, the mystagogue. But he's also the trickster god. He's always pulling tricks. And then Miguel, when we were even talking about how there was like these witches that are doing like a mass hex against Trump.
Yeah.
And I also think personally that all that crazy stuff that happened with the Democrats, like all these bombs are being mailed to like Hillary and George
Mhm.
Soros and Obama. I think that might somehow connected to that. I don't know, but yeah, I do think that I theorize that the left is somehow very much connected to witchcraft, but it doesn't make any sense though, because in leftist, communist and socialist countries, magic and the occult is basically outlawed, and including religion. So it just doesn't really make sense to me. But I just think that there is like this huge war going on between Trump and his enemies on the left, and the left, like then we're talking about. Podesta and Hillary, and how they're all, basically a bunch of Baal or Molech worshippers. So, and then, somehow Trump, he's channeling Mithras somehow. I know it's just kind of hard to believe, but that he is connected to kind of Mercury. And
Mighty Mithras.
Mercury. And then I was even talking about, his penthouse in New York. Like, there's all these pictures of like Zeus and Apollo. So, he is very much connected to the Greek gods in some way. I'm just not sure how, but he is. I also think he is also kind of a Mason too, but I suspect so. I just don't know for sure. But anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think there's a magic war going on, and the two sides are so blatantly involved with occultism that it's coming out. They keep accusing each other of being part of an occult conspiracy, really. And this has happened throughout history. Every now and then it happens. Like, if you think about the Templars, what they were accused of, well, even the King of France himself was accused of Satanism also. And the guy before him was accused of it too. And so were the popes at that time. So it's like everybody was accusing everyone of Satanism back then. And maybe we're going through a similar thing now, because it's true, because they both are involved,
Right. Yeah. They're both involved in the occult, and somehow they're channeling the devil in some way. Yeah. It's really strange what we're facing.
But for example, Tracy, I know that gets bandied around, and you're right. I mean, even in the days of John Dee, I forget, there was another sorcerer on the side of the Catholic Church, and they were going at it. I mean, this happens throughout history, but what forces do you think? Because even as I was telling Alex, the term Satanism gets bandied about, and it sort of loses its meaning. What forces do you think? Are you talking about dark spirits, Satan, ancient archetypes? What do you think they're drawing upon?
Well, when it comes to Hillary, we know that she and Bill were both involved with voodoo in Haiti.
Oh, wow.
And that's even in a biography that one of them wrote early on. Like, I think Bill Clinton put out a book right after he got elected president. And so he went over his life and, how he got to where he was. He mentioned that they went to Haiti for their honeymoon, mentioned ceremonies that they went through, and how fascinating he thought voodoo was. And then subsequently, there have been stories that ran in Haiti in the newspapers there about Bill Clinton attending voodoo rituals. And Clinton himself and Hillary both have, Bill and Hillary both have referred to their fascination with voodoo repeatedly since then. Not since the emails came out, not in the last 2 years, but before that, Hillary had no problem admitting that she was, fascinated with voodoo. And then there's a guy named Larry Nichols who used to work with Bill Clinton when he was a governor, and he worked with Hillary when she was working at the Rose Law Firm there in Arkansas, right? And he says that she belonged to a witch coven in LA or the Southern California area somewhere. So she would frequently fly out there to attend meetings. And he told her at one point, because Bill was running for re-election, he said, you need to keep this quiet, and also you need to go to church or do something to have a counter image to make yourself look better, so that you can laugh these stories off and say, oh, I wouldn't do a thing like that. And she just said, I can't do that, Larry. As if I know that since then she has been to church with Bill for photo ops, but at that time she wasn't even willing to step foot in a Christian church for her husband's image at all. She said she couldn't. Wow. So since then, rumors about Hillary being a witch have been around a lot, and I don't see any reason to discount them. And you can sort of just tell too, like, well, I guess I'll just leave it at that. There's some stories about her being involved in some really extreme stuff, but I don't know if I believe it or not because of what we've just described. Like, there's so much BS going around. But there's a story that there's a video of her and Huma attending a ritual that was very hardcore, and people died and were dismembered. And I'll leave it at that because there's a child in the room right now. But yeah, it was bad. So I think if even half the rumors are true, yeah, she's into some very dark stuff. So you're right that the word Satanism is vague, but there's the idea of left and right path, right? Well, she's definitely, dark. And, yeah, Bill seems to be into that same kind of doing rituals in order to get power sort of thing. And the rumors in Haiti is that he attended rituals where children died and their blood was used, and it was all for him to give him power and protection. So I classify that as, dark and evil, whatever you want to call it, but it's definitely that. If people are dying or being hurt and you're doing it for your own self-aggrandizement or enrichment, then yeah, that's definitely bad. That's all I can say about them. When you look at Trump, I think it's a little more vague, and yeah, you have to kind of read the symbolism. And I think Alex was, correct to identify an obsession with the sun and the sun gods, the old world, wanting to identify himself with Apollo. And a couple of years ago, when he first met Macron, they were both doing this Apollo symbolism, and it seemed like he wanted to utilize that image, but it didn't go where he wanted. Because remember, he wanted to have the big military parade for himself, and they turned him down. So I think that was meant to be a big, sun god enthronement ritual that never happened.
I would love to see it.
Yeah.
That would have been pretty cool, actually, just to see. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we know he's a devotee of Norman Vincent Peale and with the power of positive thought. So I think might be searching for the right archetype or archetypal forces with all this other stuff. But again, it's interesting how QAnon, or at least the circles around him, are using very esoteric symbols and magic symbols and other stuff. So
they're definitely trying to paint it as a good versus evil fight, right?
It's a Game of Thrones. It's actually more of a Game of Thrones.
But yeah, they've been upfront about it. Like, yeah, we're promoting Kek. We're using the power of Kek. We're using chaos magic, essentially, to overthrow the satanic elite. And well, I don't know that that's incorrect. Maybe that is what's going on. But what is that then? What if the forces of chaos take over? And how does that compare to the power of Satan? Is it like Satan is the law and order of the world, and then there's this chaos that takes that away? What do you think, guys? That's your area.
What do you think, Alex?
Well, I mean, chaos magic, the symbol of chaos magic is a star, right? The 8-pointed star. And that connects to Ishtar or Ashtaroth. And of course, Ishtaroth is a demon in Galactic or Solomonic magic. So, I mean, I don't really think that's really opposed to the devil necessarily. I don't know. It's really hard to say, but I think maybe that the right or the alt-right, I should say, they're kind of are using that same sort of magic against the slave masters, I guess. They're using their own weapon against them, basically, in a way, if you want to call it that. But I was watching some video about some girl. I forgot her name, but she was talking about her experiences with chaos magic and how you're actually talking to or you're channeling or invoking like a black star. Yeah, it's really crazy. So and somehow that black star gives you material goods, but you have to make sacrifices for it. So that's what chaos magic is really about,
Wow.
So it was really crazy. I was watching that, like, wow, okay, so that's what's really about, okay. And but going back to what you were talking about, Tracy, about Hillary, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but tell me or not, yes or no. But if you want to talk about her connection with Jack Parsons.
Oh, sure. Well, okay. So a couple years ago, I wrote this article that was explaining a theory that occurred to me. And just to sum it up, the idea is that if you were to take seriously the rumors that Jack Parsons created some kind of homunculus with magic, and that this child was born, there are rumors about this. I don't know if you want to believe them or not, but anyway, if you wanted to believe that a child was created through a sex magic ritual and there's something somewhat artificial about the child. Like, I'm talking about one of those homunculuses that's, made like a golem, made from like dead body parts or something like that. Right. And I don't know. The idea is that there was this homunculus that was created through these strange rites and alchemical processes, and that baby is destined to be the whore of Babylon. He wrote about the whore of Babylon in his book of the Antichrist. And he referred to this figure with a very specific term, Hilarion. Now, the only other use of this term that I'm familiar with, it's used as like a code word or a code name by several people that have been involved with the OTO. But historically, I can only think of the cult of Cybele in Rome, and this was the name for what they called Holy Week in March, when they would do the castrations of the priests, so that it was all a recreation of what Cybele supposedly did to her son Addis. And so, anyway, the story is that Hillary was born around the time of this alleged ritual. So her official biography dates her to the same time. And not only that, she made a very strange reference to Palo Alto, and that she was created in a lab in Palo Alto by some scientists.
Really?
And she was trying to make a joke. Hillary's jokes always come off bad. So anyway, she's making a joke about herself and how people think she's weird, I guess. And so she was saying, yeah, actually, I'm not human. I was created in a lab in Palo Alto. Well, that's where the college that Jack Parsons attended was. And, you know, he wasn't very far from there when he was doing his experiments. So experiments with rockets and also experiments supposedly with magic, sex magic, creating a homunculus. So, I mean, you'd have to read the article. There's some more stuff in it to, you know, indicate. It's all circumstantial, of course. But I tell you what, when I put this out there, the reaction I got from OTO people was so extreme. Like, they usually ignore what I have to say, you know? They don't talk about me much. But I just got hit with so much hate from them on this. And I didn't mind, you know, it helped my traffic, but it definitely hit a nerve. And I wasn't sure, like, do they not want their Whore of Babylon to be associated with Hillary because Hillary's not cool? Or is it the opposite? And is it like, I'm too close to home here? And since then, I've been trolled pretty hard by Hillary bots, and I've had people that I know are high up in her campaign writing to me, acting like they're fans, wanting to know, you know, what I'm up to, what I'm planning next, and then sending me information about QAnon and things like that. And when you look up these people's backgrounds, you know they work for Hillary, and I'm just like, why are you sending me this? So I'm very suspicious of her and her entourage. I do think that they're connected to the OTO. Well, the Hillary personnel that I'm talking about, I know for certain they're connected to the OTO. Wow. It's documented. So, I mean, look, the OTO is everywhere, you know? I mean, they're people, right? So there's some of them work for Google, and some of them work for MIT, and some of them work for the government. That's not that weird, but, you know, you put all these things together and it forms a pattern. So I do think that Hillary's people, some of them are definitely involved with the occult, and they're also running operations on the internet for her to, if nothing else, infiltrate and have some kind of influence on what other people are saying about her. And they've targeted me particularly because I think I'm not wrong about some of the things I see here, some of the symbolism, that maybe she isn't this homunculus, but that she might be symbolically connected with this image of the Whore of Babylon. Maybe she is. And then, you know, just some of the things about her, like they say that she smells really bad. There's 2 or 3 people who have said she has a smell like a dead body. And it's a very particular thing. You know, you don't hear this about everybody. So I connected it with the idea that if she's a homunculus that's made, you know, artificially, maybe she is rotting, you know, and look at the lady. She looks very bad, you know. She's got a lot of weird health problems. And then she seems very intelligent at times when she's got the right drugs or whatever. But when she's not, she's falling apart and she has to be carried and moved around like she's a doll, you know? So I don't know. There's something very weird about Hillary. And I threw this out there, I think, to be funny, really. I thought people would take it as a joke, even though I wasn't joking when I wrote it. But I didn't think that the public would. I thought they would mostly laugh at it, which is what most people did. But then certain people who know about these things wrote to me and said, yeah, you're right. You know, and I was like, wow, really? I was just guessing. So I don't know. I think that I might be on something. She might be someone who is destined to take power at some point. And maybe that's why she feels the way she does. You know, she acts like she deserves this, and it's written in stone that she'll be president. That's why she freaked out so hard when she didn't get it. And maybe she knows something we don't about what her own destiny is.
Yeah, possibly. I know officially she was actually born here in Chicago. that's at least the official story. I think she grew up in Highland Park, somewhere around here. But well, let's move away to other types of homunculus, because we definitely want to get through this. I hope you can hang a little bit longer, Tracy. This is really fascinating. Of course, it's just awesome talking to you. But tell us, and even in the chat room, people are saying some great stuff, great compliments. Not a lot of arguments tonight. So it's almost like people actually agree with you. Usually people are fighting, but there's certainly some people in the chat room who want to know about your excellent work on Mickey Mouse. And I've been to your plus section, and I advise everybody join Tracy's, because there's a lot of good stuff. You think this is good, there's even more in her member section. So tell us about your Mickey Mouse article.
Okay, so it really turned out to be a book. I'll probably publish it as a book here, but it's available as a long article. If you were to print it out, it would be 400 pages. So anyway, it started out that I noticed that there's a term supposedly used interchangeably with Baphomet. It's mentioned in the Oxford English Dictionary when it talks about how they thought that Baphomet was really just another way of saying Muhammad, and that Muhammad was a generic term used back then in Templar times for an idol worshipped by a cult. And it had to do with the fact that Europeans didn't know anything about Islam, and that's how they perceived them, was just being pagans. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so that's the idea. That's why Oxford English Dictionary said that. And one of the terms they referred to as another word that was cited by Templars in their confessions was mouse. So they referred to the Baphomet head as the mouse head, or a mouse head.
Wow.
And so I was just going to look into that a little bit and see if it meant anything. And the Mickey Mouse face occurred to me just because it's a weird thing. I don't know. It just looks weird. His face looks weird. And if you look at the images of Baphomet that, for instance, I found in Mysterium Baphometus Revelatum, written by Hammer Bergstall, he found a bunch of artifacts that he thought were Templar artifacts. Some of them actually were idols or had images of the idols on them. And so you can see all these possibly real Templar depictions of Baphomet, of the head. And it does kind of look like this freaky cat head in some ways. It looks like it might be a mask. And then it has these ears in some instances that I just thought, well, maybe this is connected to the Mickey Mouse head, but it was just a thought, So I started looking into it. One of the first things I note in one of my German dictionaries, it says that Maus means knife point, and also bullet, and all these things about piercing, So anyway, I found tons of interesting things about the etymology connected with both Maus and also the word Mickey. And so first I figured out that this has something to do with actually it's a symbol of slipping someone a Mickey, okay? It's a symbol of poisoning someone or giving someone a drug, like a date rape drug, to make them pass out and then do what you want with them. And so it's used by criminals to take advantage of people, this technique, but also some secret societies use it in their induction ceremonies. And so in one of my videos, and then also in the article, I talk all about this and some of the instances in which this is known to occur. And then, I mean, it's a really long essay, but the next thing all that led me to had to do with the song Mac the Knife, because it's actually comes from this opera, or it's a stage play called the Threepenny Opera, from like Weimar, Germany, late 1920s.
Oh, wow.
And it came out the same year that Walt Disney supposedly invented Mickey Mouse. And in German, the character's name is Mackie Messer, because Messer is knife, and in German. And the play is all about this guy. He's a murderer and a rapist and a hardened criminal. And he ends up at the end becoming a banker and joining the Order of the Garter, because it all takes place. The story takes place in London, even though it's a German opera. But so it's a story about this really bad guy, but he's celebrated in a way and made into a hero. And so this play comes out in 1928. Mickey Mouse is invented the same year. And then right around the time that the movie version of Three Penny Opera is coming out, that's when Mickey makes his theatrical appearance. And it's right around the time that the stock market crashed also. But there's just a lot of very direct connections between Mac the Knife and Mickey Mouse. Oh, one of the movies he appeared in around at that time was Opry House. Okay. It's a Mickey Mouse short called Opry House, where he's running, his own live variety show theater. And this is the first time that Mickey Mouse wore gloves. So he wears these white gloves now, but he didn't before. And the gloves have 3 lines on the back. It's exactly the same gloves that Mackie Messer wears. And they're referred to in the song Mac the Knife. Excuse me. That, he's killing people with a knife. And then the gloves are there so that the blood doesn't get on his hands. So his hands are always clean. And the song also talks about how his knife is hidden and it's not in an obvious place, just like the shark's teeth. And so what it's really all about is someone who presents themselves to be nice and funny and cute, like Mackie Messer is presented in this opera and in this movie. He's celebrated, but he's a bad guy, and he'll get you. And Frank Sinatra even added a little bit more when he did his version of the song. So he added that, I'll tell you about Mac the Knife. It's an offer you can't refuse. This is a line from The Godfather. And there's a character in The Godfather that this line is used about the first time in the first movie. And then, it's used to refer to the same kind of thing from that point onward several times throughout the series. And what it is, it's a story based on something that really happened with Frank Sinatra, where he wanted to get out of his contract with the Tommy Dorsey band. And so he had his godfather, who was part of a mafia cartel, and so was Frank. He had this guy threaten to kill Tommy Dorsey and said, if you don't take $1,000 right now and let him out of his contract, we'll kill you. And so that's referred to as the offer you can't refuse. And Frank Sinatra came out and sang about it and said that Mac the Knife is a symbol for that. It's a way of referring to that. So Frank and Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. all did this song, many, many times throughout their lives. They performed it. They all were associated with the song. Sammy Davis was in the movie in the 60s, the American movie version of it. He's the organist who plays the song, Mac the Knife. Anyway, there's a half-hour segment of my video series about Mickey Mouse and all this symbolism. So if you find the video that's called Mickey Mouse and Mac the Knife, that section explains all this stuff, and I think really lays out how it seems very clear that Walt Disney was inspired by Mac the Knife when he created Mickey, but he couldn't come out and say that because he's a dark figure, But the evidence is all there, and what's even more interesting, I think, is that other people have picked up on this throughout the years, but they don't come out and say it either. So in Marilyn Manson's Golden Age of Grotesque album and the tour that he did for that album, the symbolism is all about this, but no one has ever even noticed until now. That's what the whole joke is about this. It's about that Mickey Mouse was inspired by blackface makeup for that people were, wearing in stage plays and stuff and movies back then. And then the connections with Mac the Knife. It's all in this Marilyn Manson album. And there's references to stuff with Frank Sinatra. There's references to the Kennedy assassination, which I think Frank Sinatra knows a lot about, or knew a lot about when he was alive. Wow. My research about Mickey led to be researching Frank Sinatra also, and the Manson murders and Roman Polanski, and all these things ended up being connected. And so I wrote about all of it because it's all connected to this methodology of how the crime cartels are controlling the entertainment industry. They're using these covert terms to refer to it. And the same symbolism and terminology has parallels with occult symbolism. It ties into the subject of the process church, for instance, and their involvement with crime and with murders. The idea that there are satanic cults that operate within criminal cartels and help them do operations and do hits on people. So the symbolism of Mickey Mouse being, for one thing, a murderer who pretends to be a nice guy is there. And then the other thing I mentioned about slipping someone a Mickey, that's all buried in his name as well. And you can see references to that throughout the work of all the people I just mentioned, Roman Polanski and Frank Sinatra. And it opened up the whole Manson murder subject for me, for instance. I really think that there's a lot more that nobody's even thought of yet. So I've mentioned some of it in my essay, and I'm going to have to expand upon it more because there's a lot that I couldn't even fit in there that I figured out. I've got all these notes and stuff. So probably over the course of the next year, I'll be presenting all this to the public. And I really think it kind of opens up a lot of cold cases. And a lot of them, I think, are tied directly to Frank Sinatra. But if you're wondering what Frank Sinatra really has to do with Disney, they were friends. They had some of the same properties. Walt Disney would rent out his properties to Frank Sinatra sometimes. And also they allowed Jack Kennedy to have his affairs with Marilyn Monroe and other people there. So there were these sex parties going on, and Disney would have known about it and possibly filmed it, if it happened on his property. So all this stuff is connected. It's explained in the article, explained in the videos. There's more coming, more videos. You guys will see for yourself. I mean, it sounds like I'm connecting a lot of really disconnected things, but once you see what I put together, you'll see why I put them together. And I'm pretty impressed with what I have here, actually. So I can't wait to explain it more to people when I have more time.
Wow. No, I think it's going to be amazing when you can put this all out into one package, because right now I'm seeing so much connection, and it's great. Again, for some reason, I just did an interview with Tobias Churton, again, the synchronicities, and I've been doing some research on the Process Church and the Charles Manson. So when I hit something and we talk about it like this, and you start hitting some of the ideas that I've been working, I know you're going down the right road. So this is awesome. And I invited a friend, a cult fan. He's trying to get his media going. Can you hear me, man?
I can, brother. How are you?
Good, good. Well, glad you're here with Alex Rivera and Tracy Twyman. I know you probably have a question for Tracy. I know you're dying to ask her.
Well, first, I just want to say hi, Tracy. It's nice to finally talk with you, and I want to thank you for all the great work you've done for the community over the stretch of the years here. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks for saying
Miguel.
that.
Oh no, I mean it. Legit. Like we've talked back and forth, and we don't need to go into all the details. But if you don't mind, I'm just going to listen for a bit, and if I have a question, I'll pop in. And hello, Alex, and hi, Miguel, and hi, everyone in the chat room.
Hi.
Thought I'd bring an audience member, and he's been, a great guy. I've enjoyed you in Occulture with Ryan a few times, so it's good to have you on. So, but Alex, what do you think about the Mickey thing? I know you can tie it to higher symbolism.
Well, the Mickey Mouse character, he's also kind of a trickster deity, don't you think? Like he started out in that cartoon. It was like I think he was on a boat or something.
Steve.
Yeah, something like that. But he's a little more of a psychopath in his early incarnations, right? I mean, don't you think? I don't know. What do you think, Tracy?
Yeah, I guess you could say that about a lot of those cartoon characters too from the old days, like Bugs Bunny. I mean, what a jerk! If you think about the stuff he did to Elmer Fudd, he was a real sicko, and he used to say so, right? Ain't I a stinker? He knew he was a bad guy. But the worst I thought was Tom and Jerry. Like that used to just bring me to tears to see what Jerry did to Tom. So
I know.
Yeah, psychopath mice.
The coyote and the roadrunner. Why didn't that bird get it for once?
Exactly.
Well, you guys do realize that Mickey's best friend was an analog for Hades, which is Pluto.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I think another thing I brought up in the video, Mac the Knife, the first 10 minutes of the video is all about the connection between Mickey and St. Nicholas, because in a lot of countries they replace the N with M, and his name basically sounds like Mickey, Miklaus, Miklov, things like that. Most Nikolai.
That's a great point. And you guys do realize that JFK was allegedly assassinated by a mouser.
Oh, really?
You mean a Mauser?
To your point, yes. No pun intended to your point, but about penetration, right? It's another sink in there.
Yes. Oh, and so Mickey Mouse has this nemesis called Black Pete, and also called Bootleg Pete. Okay, well, Black Pete is Knecht Ruprecht or Krampus. This is the guy that
celebrate the Black Pete Festival.
So he's the bad guy. He's the bad Santa. And it comes from the story of St. Nicholas, where he supposedly somehow resurrected 3 boys that this bad butcher had killed, and he put their bodies in 3 barrels of brine. He was going to sell their meat as though it was pork. And Nicholas came and he figured out what was going on, and he resurrected the boys. And then the butcher followed Nicholas around from that time onward, and he flagellates himself for, because he's sorry for what he did. But then he also plays the role like Krampus or Black Pete, where he has to go around punishing the bad kids. So the good kids get toys and candy. The bad kids get a lump of coal. But in the older stories, it's really a lot worse. They get kidnapped. They get taken to his lair, and you can imagine what happens after that. So, it's all this, what we would now call Pizzagate type stuff is in the story of St. Nicholas. And then you deconstruct his name and it matches up with Mickey. And then you look at his companion, it's Black Pete. And then you look at Mickey and he has this dog named Pluto. So it's the same thing where he has this companion that's a demon,
Yeah. Tracy, you know that they have the black. Now, this I learned from No Agenda, Alex, Miguel, and Tracy. They actually are going through every year this kind of controversy because their Santa is called Black Pete. They have Black Pete's over there. And they're actually talking about how it's racist to have them dress up with the coal, and they can get into how it's a world agenda kind of thing. But I think it's interesting that they still actually have a Black Pete, but in this case, he filled in for the Mickey Mouse or Santa Claus figure. And let us not forget Michael Myers.
It was my understanding that Black Pete and Santa go around together, and like in the old days, Black Pete might actually whip some butts. He might go around exacting revenge on the known troublemakers in the village. There's all these posters of Krampus. Krampus and Black Pete are like interchangeable, and sometimes I see figures that have the features of both. So they're definitely the same figure. And there's all these old postcards that show Krampus or Black Pete coming and whipping a child in front of its mother while its mother stands there approvingly, like, yeah, go for it. Because I guess that's the bad kid, and the good kids are getting candy from St. Nicholas. So anyway, yeah, they have these festivals, and they're still doing them in Europe. And yeah, the Black Pete character is usually a white guy with blackface makeup. So there again, you have the same thing as what Mickey's appearance is basically based on. And you guys really have to check out the Marilyn Manson album after the end of this. And I'm not recommending the music, but it's
Golden Age of the Grotesque.
Golden Age of Grotesque.
Okay.
Yeah, Dole Digga, Buzz Bud Ziggity Zag, and Saint, and things like. Yeah, I listened to that in high school pretty frequently.
And it came out. Well, okay, the Golden Age it's referring to. I think that's a reference directly to the Louis Buñuel movie that came out in 1929, the same time period as what I'm talking about here. So, and that's a movie that's based on 120 Days of Sodom by Marquis de Sade. And it had, what's his name? The artist was involved at least in the movie. What's his name?
Not Fellini.
No, the melting clocks guy.
Dolly.
Dolly. Okay, so Dolly was involved in the movie early on, and then he kind of, I think, broke up with his friend Louis Buñuel halfway towards, the end of making the movie. But anyway, I think that Marilyn Manson's album is referring to that, and there's so much in that album, in the lyrics and in the cover art, the pictures that he had taken at that time. There was a whole photo shoot that he had done by, I don't know, a famous photographer. And they're all very pregnant with meaning. So you can tell this guy knows something about Mickey Mouse and Mac the Knife and all these dark things that were coming out around this time period of late 1920s, early 30s. And he's not saying what it is he knows. He's hinting at it, and he's never said since. Oh, but there is an indication, another clue. This clue comes from Lil Uzi Vert, okay? Because they're friends now. Marilyn Manson and Lil Uzi Vert hang out now. And Uzi says, Manson is his favorite. It's the only guy he follows on Twitter. So a year ago, Uzi Vert spent $200,000 to buy this diamond-encrusted necklace that has Marilyn Manson on it, a little figure of him wearing the Mickey Mouse costume, this evil Mickey Mouse costume that he had on his Golden Age of Grotesque album. So Lil Uzi Vert's making a reference to that, and on the Mickey Mouse hat that the Marilyn Manson figure is wearing on the necklace is the number 2.
Oh my God.
Do you guys know what that is? If you don't, I'll tell you.
Tell us.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
Manson 2. There's a character called Manson 2 that's referred to in the book The Ultimate Evil by Maury Terry. That's about the Process Church and how he thinks that the Manson murders were process hits, and the Berkowitz murders were process hits.
Wow.
And he had an informant who told him that some of the Berkowitz murders were done by this figure, this person, a hitman, who's referred to in the cult as Manson II. That's his nickname. And he did know Charles Manson at one point. And he's involved supposedly in the murder of Roy Radin, the Hollywood producer, who's connected to organized crime and stuff. So anyway, the reference is obvious on the Lil Uzi Vert necklace that this is Manson II. Now, I don't think he's calling Marilyn Manson Manson II. He's just sharing a joke that they both know about. And Marilyn Manson, was buddies with Anton LaVey, part of the Church of Satan. So he would have had a line on inside information about this kind of stuff because Anton LaVey, he knew all about what I was referring to earlier about what I think Frank Sinatra was involved in. Nancy Sinatra was supposedly hung out with the Manson family. And there's a guy who says that he has video that was taken at the Manson Spawn Ranch. That's tons of famous people, doing it with the Manson girls. And they kept logs of all the stuff that happened. And so some of the people on the films include supposedly John and George from the Beatles together in a gay encounter. Okay. That's the kind of stuff that they had. I
all you need is Tracy.
So the Manson family was not anything like what it's portrayed. They were involved in compromising people. They were involved with, I can't get into it all, but I mean, they knew what the agenda was that the Beatles were about to put out. That's why he thought there were messages to him on the White Album, because he knew these guys. So it's logical, actually, that there might have been messages to him on the album. And John Lennon went and bought the Rosemary's Baby house a few years later when someone mentioned that to him, that, this is the same house that they put the Rosemary's Baby movie in. He supposedly wrote the words Helter Skelter on the wall and then covered it up with a box. Yeah. But he knew something, and I think that it had to do with the process, because the process had actively targeted them as people they wanted to recruit. And they were involved with the Manson family, so that would have been an avenue for them to have access. Anyway, it's a huge subject, but so back to the Manson 2 thing is just, there's no doubt in my mind, after I put that together, I figured out, okay, Marilyn Manson totally knows tons of stuff about this organized crime group that includes the Process Church, that had something to do, I think, with the Manson murders, JFK's murder, Bobby Kennedy's murder for sure, and several other high-level incidents in that time period. So,
did you notice, Tracy, that the Golden Age of Grotesque was released within a week of Beltane?
No, I didn't notice that. Okay, cool.
What about you, Alex? You're being rather quiet.
Yeah, well,
did they get to you?
No. I was reading Tracy's article, and she was connecting the Yellow Submarine from the Beatles to the Demiurge, right? Tracy, I think you're talking about Hillary Boob or something.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like really crazy. Like it's all about the recreation of another universe. It's totally nuts. And I think you even talked about another article called Fake News, and you were connecting John Dee's magic with creating another universe. Like he's also some sort of demiurge, and we're kind of trapped in his own occult matrix, you want to call it that. Then you have all these other billionaires trying to escape this matrix, this magical matrix. So yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty interesting. I mean, I don't know if I really believe it all, but I kind of like the way your mind works, where it's going. So I mean, it's fascinating how you put all these connections together. But I just thought I mentioned that.
Well, I when I was writing Genuflect, that's when I kind of looked into the alchemy stuff, and then stuff that Aleister Crowley had written about sex magic and homunculuses, moon children, and things like that. And that's when I kind of figured out that they're talking about creating another universe in the body of a person that would be born after, after a sex magic rite of that sort, that you're creating a god that is actually the new Aeon. In its own body, it has the new universe, I think. I think that's what Aleister Crowley was hinting at. And I figure he didn't make it up. He probably got it from someone else. So that's a tradition. They probably know what they're talking about. They have some reason to believe that they can do this. And then when I looked at the Yellow Submarine movie, it's all about that, because it is about everything disappears. The whole of existence disappears, through, I think, the Sea of Holes, or no, it goes into the Sea of Nothing. And then they have to paint the universe all over again and sing it into existence. And Hilary Boob, who's this sort of, wordy, cerebral writer who he's verbose and he talks too much and he's kind of a know-it-all. So the Beatles are all making fun of him brutally, or Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which is the alter egos of the Beatles in this movie. They're just mercilessly, attacking this character who's like a stowaway on their boat. So they keep hitting him with all these insults that seem to me like the kinds of things that Gnostics would say about the demiurge, where, that he thinks he's all that. He thinks he's everything. He thinks he knows everything, but he's really the nowhere man, and he's a fool. He's the fool on the hill and all that. And so the fact that he's called Hilary Jeremy Boob is weird, considering what I just told you about my theory about Hillary. Yeah. And then, yes, he's the demiurge in this movie. It's his job to recreate the universe with the Beatles, but they treat him like he's dirt, and it's a Gnostic point of view. I know you guys might use that label yourselves, so I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but this is something that's okay. Anyway. Right. And the bad guys, the blue meanies in that movie, are wearing Mickey Mouse hats. And Paul McCartney used to wear Mickey Mouse hats all the time. And the people that designed the cover for Sgt. Pepper, one of those artists, well, both of them were obsessed with Mickey Mouse. And one of them, she's still on it, that Mickey Mouse trip. She's still doing Mickey Mouse art. I don't know. It means something. It connects somehow.
Wow, that is amazing connections, and I don't even know where to go. My mind is blown. And again, I don't want to keep bringing. Well, I had a synchronicity, but I was honestly listening to the White Album this morning. I don't know why it just came to me. So it's synchronicities abound. Well, Occult fan or Alex, you have a question for Tracy or a comment, because this is just really cool.
Alex, you go.
Go ahead.
Alex, you go.
I guess you better go, Occult fan.
Okay, well, in that case, I think that while you were talking about that, Tracy, and about speaking or singing the world into existence, obviously that connects with Crowley's abrahadabra, which is, as I speak, I create.
Good point.
And, well, a point like a mouse, but yeah, no, I think that, I think that the way that your mind works is it's you've said so much, it's like in The Simpsons when Mr. Burns has all the germs and none of them can get through. my mind's trying to process like everything I've just been given. And it's just like,
Okay, so there's an image you might be familiar with. It's a drawing of a tulpa made by a theosophist. I'm trying to remember the dude's name. I'll look it up, but it looks exactly like the flowers that come out of Hillary's mouth when they're singing. I think they're singing "All You Need Is Love" at the end. And these flowers come out of his mouth. When you take that picture, if you were to take a little snapshot on your computer screen and compare it to this, famous in the occult world, famous theosophical painting of a tulpa or a thought form that has come to life, they look almost identical. So I'll try to find it for you here while we're talking. But
I'm looking it up
I
too.
figured that would be useful to you.
Yeah, it's amazing. There was a documentary that recently came out on the Process Church, and it's supposed to be in depth, but it paints them as not what we are talking about right now, or at the very least, it's sort of a loose satellite organization.
Tracy, you've got to be kidding me. If you're talking about we just stepped into like the sink of sinks. So you're talking about the postcard I have here?
Hold on. Yeah. It's called.
Hey, Miguel,
It's
you did good today.
Music of Gunod, according to Kappy and C.W. Ledbetter.
Yeah, and they premiered. So my birthday, as Miguel knows, because we just talked about this in private chat. They premiered a Gunod piece on my birthday this year in Boston.
Wow.
Yeah, dude, this is pretty cosmic. I wanted to mention that you mentioned Hilarion earlier, speaking of theosophy. And as Dark Journalist has pointed out, and there's all these MIT connections and whatnot, and you can find this in his X series. Master Hilarion is one of the Theosophy Society's ascended masters.
Oh, wow.
And of course, Leadbeater, that goes back to the pedo stuff and false messiahs and all that good stuff. So
Miguel, the guy who wrote the article about the Gudon, if I'm saying his name right, the man who wrote the article about this premiering in Boston on September 22nd, his last name was Leadbetter.
Oh, here we go. More synchronicities. Wow.
I'm trying to find. Go ahead, please.
No, I'm just saying, is this a Saint Ledbetter? He's the theosophist. He's like kind of I don't know, like a priest / magician. He wrote something about the occult nature of the Eucharist. Is that the same guy that we're talking about?
Probably.
Talking about the guy who groomed Krishnamurti, I think.
Maybe. I don't know.
Is there a way I can send you guys a picture? What's the best way for me to send a picture to somebody to get it on the screen?
Oh, you can hold it up in front of your camera is what I did. That's
well, is there another way? Like can I send it through Twitter to you, Miguel?
Yeah, and I'll do a screen share.
Okay.
Yeah, that works.
This seems key here, so just give me a second. Go ahead and talk while I'm doing this.
All right. I'm waiting for Tracy's missive.
well, while I can just be weird, I'm actually wearing a pair of 3-lined gloves right now.
No, you're kidding. You put those on. Somebody was asking
I just did.
Why do cartoon characters have 4 fingers? Is there anything to it? All of them.
Okay, I sent the thing.
Let's see. All right.
I don't know why they always have 4 fingers. Well, actually, I did read something about this, about Mickey, like that it was just too hard to. Oh, no, it was really ridiculous. He said it was cheaper to pay animators to draw 4 fingers instead of 5.
No.
You believe that?
No.
No, I think there's tons of things to be decoded about the old cartoons and why they're presented the way they are. All this stuff with anthropomorphized animals that's so normal to us now. I mean, it's not like it was unheard of before, but I mean, it's really part of our culture now in a heavy way, especially for kids. I'll bet there's a deep history there.
All right,
There you go.
Can you guys see it?
I think that's a tulpa.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So yeah, there's tons of stuff in Yellow Submarine, which the Beatles hated. They didn't want to be in the movie, and they only make one appearance at the end. And they all look miserable in the 1 or 2 minutes at the end of the movie. They look embarrassed to be there. But there's tons of allusions in the movie to sex magic that, would have involved. I mean, the illusion in the movie is that they're all doing it together. They're all part of some ritual involving each other sexually.
All together now. All together now.
Yes. There was. I wonder if I have it, because there's something the Process Church dude said, de Grimston.
It wasn't. It wasn't come together, was it?
Yes,
right now over.
It was very similar. It was like you could tell that. I think John Lennon wrote that, right? He read de Grimston and then wrote that song. It's obvious. The similarity is very close. Come together over me. Yep.
Yeah.
And he's talking about God and the devil coming together. That's what de Grimston was talking about.
And you realize that this ties all into Twin Peaks, of course, which is probably the biggest masterpiece of the last and the century. They have tulpas in that, of course. I'm not going to give away too much because I really think people should enjoy that as much as they can. But there's the White Lodge, the Black Lodge. Of course, that's the right hand and the left hand path. There are tulpas that are used and created for certain purposes. And let us not forget that the most famous episode of The Return was episode 8, which signifies the Babylon working and nuclear explosions tearing a hole in the fabric of the dimensions, which allows Bob in. So that's why 1947 was so significant, because that's when I believe the dimensions were shredded asunder. Tracy, I think you've touched on this in your work. This is when a lot of stuff went real bad. And of course, then we have JPL and Not a Straight Answer, whatever it is.
Grant Morrison, the Invisibles, that's how everything started, was also the bomb and his mythology.
Which his mythology is completely correct. Without going into too much singularity detail, when I was part of a men's group and we did a prayer to Kefra. When I got back, my copy of the Invisibles, the omnibus, had arrived, and of course, as you know how Invisible starts, it's with Kefra. So this is all we're all tied together right here. There's no accidents.
Wow.
Yeah, bro. Tracy, sis, I guess. I don't know. Whatever. All together now.
Yeah. We all live. No, never mind. There's not some, yeah. So I told
right? Oh, God. You just made me think that might be something that's going on. But yeah, Twin Peaks definitely shows because. Oh, and I want to put this out there. There's a really great documentary I mentioned in the chat room earlier for this. Just look up Secret History of Twin Peaks and Stanley Kubrick. And that's where I'll lead you for that. But it ties together with what you were just saying, Miguel. I don't want to get into it. It's pretty disturbing stuff.
And Tracy, do you let your kid watch Disney movies?
Luckily, he doesn't care too much about them. I mean, yeah, he could take it or leave it. He's got his own obsessions now, and he's really not influenced by the media very much at all. It's kind of great, and also it's frightening. I mean, it's frightening to me because he's just so beyond my control now, you know? It's too late for me to teach him anything. He's figuring everything out on his own, and I can't even do anything about it. But it's okay. It's turning out well so far.
Well, as long as he's learning from you the symbols, what to watch out, the signs, all that, and the mythic worlds, the legends, all that, then he'll be pretty well armed. I mean, that's half of the battle, right? Knowing the symbols and the archetypes that are behind them and everything else.
Miguel, go ahead.
No.
Well, I'll just say, Tracy, and then you go. Tracy, as you know, as we've said in private messaging, I won't give the date, but Tracy and my mom have the same birthday. Speaking of moms and sons who are aware of occult things.
Wow.
Cool.
Well,
it's just weird.
Is she anything like me?
You know, no.
Okay.
No, I don't think anyone's quite like you, Tracy, and we're lucky to have you, frankly.
Amen to that. All right. Well, I think we've pretty much gone a good hour and a half, 2 hours, so we probably should wrap it up. And this has been a great conversation. Very cool remarks. How we can get to all the questions in the chat room, perhaps another time. And again, for others, this has been Heretics Anonymous, and this will eventually, hopefully sooner than later, be out in audio and iTunes, so we can reach. Of course, it'll be on YouTube as soon as probably tomorrow, for those of you who want to re-listen or anything else, but it'll be out on iTunes and all the other podcasters, and a audio version. And we hope to do some more of these because, again, look at the energy and the good egregores we're creating simply on our second episode, and appreciate those being here. So, Alex, thanks for being here and making this happen with me. You rock.
Sure. Yeah, I'm glad it happened. So, I mean, glad it worked in its own way. So, a lot of good magic.
There you go. And Occult fan, thanks for being our surprise guest. You did well, and I've always enjoyed your work and what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing, man.
Thank you for having me, Miguel. And I just want to say thank you, Alex and Tracy, as well. You guys rock. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Hey, Nathan, I know you asked for a Xerox of an article from an old magazine I put out, and I still have your request in my email box, so I haven't forgotten about you, and I will send it to you.
I super appreciate that, the Danny Carey interview, because I'm writing the book about the Holy Gift. Yes, thank you so much, Tracy.
Sure. Sorry it took so long.
No worries, thank you.
All right, well, and Tracy, thank you so much for coming on Heretics Anonymous, Aeon Byte, the Megas Aeon. It's always awesome talking to you, and it's always just wonderful seeing the research you're doing and how you're moving things forward. Did we lose Tracy?
No, that was Nathan you lost.
I'm still here, I think.
Oh, you went to no video.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with that. My phone got hot, I think. But thank you all again. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
All right. And well, again, Tracy, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to talking to you again.
All right. Thanks. I'm going to dump out because I don't think my kid can be quiet any longer. So
no, I agree. I got to get to my kids. They're probably dying outside the room. They want attention too.
Okay.
Well, good night, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. So long.
She's here to discuss her recent articles and work on Saturn, David Bowie, Prince, and a variety of other topics. Tracy Twyman, welcome to Off Planet TV.
Thank you very much for having me. It's nice to be here.
Absolutely. Okay, so first, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into writing about esoteric topics, and then a little bit of how you got into doing seances, which will be the first topic we get into tonight.
Sure. Well, writing about esoteric topics, I think, started really when I was about 15 or 16 years old. I was going to a community college there, and I was opinion page editor of the newspaper. So one of my things that I did was every week I would do what they call an opinion column, but I really just it was like a well-researched essay that would go on for a couple pages, and it was usually about what people might consider conspiracy theories, but I don't know. It was always full of facts. So
right, funny how that works, huh?
And so I got interested in that kind of stuff, and that sort of esoteric or behind the scenes politics, I guess. And then that quickly led to someone telling me about the Masonic conspiracy theory. I thought that was fascinating. I was already kind of interested in the occult because I don't know. I had read some Lovecraft stuff. I had the Necronomicon at home, and I just thought it was fascinating, the idea that there was an occult secret society that was influencing politics and had historically for hundreds of years. So I got into that. That shortly led to me reading a series of books by Richard Bagent and Michael Bagent, Richard Lai. It was Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and Messianic Legacy. Those things really blew me away. By this time I was about 18 years old, and I'd taken some college courses in history, like the history of Western civilization, and I thought those books really put it all together for me. in terms of patterns I had seen that hadn't been explained in the history books. Connections between things that I could see were there, but I couldn't tell what it was. And I thought that book, which what it was about, is about not only the idea of a Masonic conspiracy, but in particular Masonic groups that had their allegiance to a bloodline that was allegedly from Mary Magdalene and Jesus. That's what they had speculated. And I just thought, again, that filled in a lot of the blanks. Like, of course, there's a reason why people think that that royal families are special. I had never understood why, though, and I thought that really explained it. Oh, there's something holy about them. And then I started to wonder, well, surely it didn't just start with Jesus and Mary Magdalene. There have been royal families before then. Those books had speculated that there was also the specialness of this bloodline comes from their descendants from King David of Israel. Right. Anyway, I thought this is all fascinating. I ended up putting out a magazine called Dagobert's Revenge. It was I lived in Portland at the time. This is I still live in Portland now, but I've moved to different places. At any rate, I was going to college, like I said, in Portland, and this was like 1996, right? So there was still this thing going on that we called the zine scene, right. And it all faded away a few years later, but it was cool, to self-publish magazines on a variety of obscure topics. Yeah, and distribute them yourselves. And there were stores in Portland that would sell these things. So I thought it'd be cool for me to do that. And actually what I wanted to do was I wanted to put out a magazine that seemed like as though it had been published by this secret society I had read about called the Priory of Zion. Okay. Which is the secret society I was describing that's sort of affiliated with this royal bloodline. Yeah. And the books that I had read implied that they were like working behind the scenes to try to take over the Vatican and to try to put members of this bloodline in positions of power in politics. They implied that they basically wanted to take over the European Union and bring back the throne of France and all of these other countries that no longer have their monarchies. Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to put out a magazine that looked like it was published by this organization. And it was just full of cryptic stuff that only people who had read those Holy Blood, Holy Grail books would get. It was sort of an art project, really. But after starting that, it evolved. I ended up doing some more issues. At first it was just this one issue. And then like a couple years later, I brought it back. And that time it was like real in-depth articles about these subjects. Yeah. And but still with this sort of mysterious symbolism here and there in the magazine to make people think it might be from a secret society. Yeah. And then I ended up getting together with some friends. We decided we would actually create such a secret society. And it wasn't the Priory of Zion. We called it Ordo Lapsit Exilis. So that was what that comes from is there's this story. Wolfram von Eschenbach wrote this Grail romance about the Grail as a stone, and he called it the stone that came from heaven, and he had some Latin words for that. It was kind of corrupt Latin, but anyway, that's what he called it, is Lapsit Exilis, and so we just thought we'd take that as our name. So anyway, that's how I ended up doing, I would say, not just writing about conspiracy theories, but writing really sort of in-depth and esoteric material about the mysteries of the Western occult tradition. It grew from just talking about Freemasons and Priory of Zion into getting into some really in-depth stuff. And I ended up folding that magazine. When the print magazine thing just wasn't viable anymore. Yeah. But I ended up writing books, and that's what I've been doing ever since. So that's how I got started. The Ouija board thing that you asked about, that was all part of the process too, because, I was doing all this research into these topics, and we got the idea. I was working with several other people. One of them was a guy who ended up being my husband. I'm not married to him anymore, but anyway, so he and I had this idea once that we should call up Jean Cocteau, who's this dead French artist who the Holy Blood, Holy Grail book said that he had probably been a grand master of this organization, Priory of Zion. Okay. And he had all these paintings, poems, films that he had written and directed. And, I thought, well, let's talk to him on the Ouija board if we can to see if maybe he can explain some of the symbolism in his art and if it has something to, if it connects to this Grail mystery that we're researching and all the other topics we were researching. So that's how the idea came up. And I can't really tell you because I hadn't really done any sort of, ritual magic or anything like that much. I don't know why I thought that it would work, but I don't know. My husband and I, we weren't even married at the time, but he and I just, we went into it with total suspension of disbelief. Like we had no reason to believe or disbelieve that it would work. We didn't even think about it. I don't know. We just did it. And you know what? First thing, it worked. It worked really great. Yeah. And we ended up practicing, doing it a lot more. And, we just got really much, much better at it. And other entities, pardon me, other entities that we contacted, it turned out, had a lot more information to give us even than Jean Cocteau, because you don't have to just talk to dead people. There's demons and spirits and gods and all sorts of things out there that'll talk to you.
Yeah. So, okay. So a couple of things I wanted to say there. Yeah. I was wondering if Ouija boards had been something you had played with when you were a child. Like I never did, you know what I mean? And it actually is one of those things that didn't really occur to me much in my life. I was very busy. I was a gymnast. I just didn't do stuff like that. I knew people who did. I guess maybe I don't want to say I'm scared of doing stuff like that, but it's just one of those things that's like, I don't know if I'm going to screw with that stuff. But I have to admit, I know a little bit more about it as I've gotten into studying conspiracies and, making the leap if you're actually really doing the work of researching these things to esoteric knowledge. These kind of topics have come up. And so it's interesting. And I agree with you. One of the things I like about your work is how it seems from the very beginning, everything I've looked at of yours always ties anything conspiratorial back to something that is of esoteric knowledge or occult history. And I think that's really important because what happened for me is I started looking into I've always been the person that knows that there's what you think is going on and what's really going on, and they're not usually the same thing. Mm-hmm. That kind of got into some conspiratorial stuff, looking at things. But what started happening for me is as I started having inner experiences with dancing and creativity and music and things that I'm into, I started seeing symbolism of esoteric and occult stuff that I didn't have knowledge. So I was seeing it and then having to go, what am I looking at here? And it turned out that these things that were being shown to me when I'm in, a meditative space with dance or whatever, were the signs that was where I needed to look next in my research of things I wanted to, have further information about. So it's interesting, so there is that definite tie. And I think people who don't look at that are really missing almost the whole picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I appreciate that about your work. It was interesting. I remember hearing you say that, I think I heard you say or read somewhere that when you first did it, you had no idea you were opening the portals to hell. Is this scary to you? Like, I just, that's what I was really waiting to ask you. Is this scary? Does it make you nervous? Like,
I should probably be scared, but I haven't been. Just, like I said, it seemed so natural to me when we started. Yeah. And then it has progressed in its own natural way so that, really scary things have happened, They've talked to me about hell. They told me I'm going to hell. They persuaded me to put a curse on one of my friends to try to kill him. He had sort of stabbed me in the back. And I was, after talking to, we were talking to Baphomet and to Satan and Lucifer and all these guys, my comfort level with talking about, I guess, scary and dark subjects grew a lot over time, so that things that probably should have bothered me didn't. But, in the end, none of the worst case scenarios have happened yet, I don't think. I really don't feel like I've become demonically possessed ever. No, I've never seen the, planchette fly off, although it has almost kind of levitated off the Ouija board at times. And I don't know, just nothing really scary has happened yet. So I just feel like I'm just talking to these things,
Yeah, it's interesting. So go ahead.
No, but I guess to answer your question fully, there have been times frequently where I felt like maybe this is having subtle negative effects on my life. Like I'll have bad luck and I'll think, well, I wonder if this is somehow related, but I can't really pin it down. I don't know.
Yeah, so it's interesting because you don't strike me at your energy. You have a palpable energy field, and you don't come off as a dark or scary person. You come off as a curious, inquisitive person who wants to know about stuff. And I consider myself to be like that as well. But I've had the same experience. I think I'm a dancer, and I got into this thing not intentionally, where I was basically, I guess, for lack of a better way of explaining it, channeling kind of information while I was dancing. And it wasn't something I was doing intentionally. And, I wasn't sure what it was at first. And over time, I have asked myself those same questions, about what exactly, because, it was really like this. I started having this sort of mental relationship and give and take and back and forth. That was something that was sort of giving me information, not really answering questions. When I ask questions, I only ever get one answer, and the answer is always the same. You know what I mean? But it was giving. So basically, when I dance, I get sort of visions, and the answer I get is that this is the sacred geometry of space, time, and sound. So I'll get all sorts of information about the universe, about the world. I'll see all sorts of crazy, interesting things, but a lot of them make sense. I see lots of symbolism of things of ancient Egypt, of how ancient energy systems worked, I see all sorts of stuff. But then when I ask a particular question, I only ever get, this is the sacred geometry of space, time, and sound. And which is perfect on one level for a dancer. You know what I mean? That makes a lot of sense. But in another, what does that mean? I've researched, what does that mean? I've been sitting with that for a number of years, and I've developed some ideas about it. But when you research, you can find information about sacred geometry. You can find information about time and space and sound, space and sound, all that kind of stuff. But no one has put them together like that. And, so it's one of those things that I've been kind of trying to figure out for a period of time. And I think that's one of the things that interested me about your work is I'm sort of viewing it, and it was viewing it through a geometric form. But it's become clear to me that some of these entities, spirits, demonics, are geometric. They're geometric. That's how they sort of birth themselves into things. And so it just, I don't know how to explain it. Almost like it opens a gate for things to come through. I'm not clear on any of this. I'm not sure of it. But as I've sort of understood that, I started to ask myself the same questions about, have I let things into my body and into my mind through this process that I was doing that have a negative effect, or that have, I don't feel like I'm possessed, but the same question, has something possessed me? So that's interesting. Have you, just out of curiosity, since we're on it, have you, any of the information you've ever gotten from beings that you contact, has anyone ever passed information about sacred geometry?
Well, there'll be references to shapes as sometimes. We have symbols on our board. We have our own board that we've designed that was actually
it's cool. I saw it.
Was dictated to my husband by Baphomet. Brian, I should just call him Brian so there's no confusion. I'm married to a different guy now, and Brian is deceased. So, but at any rate, the board has symbols on it, right? So as far as geometric symbols, there's really only two. There's a pentagram and there's a hexagram.
Yeah.
And they've used that to speak. In particular, the seance that you wanted to ask about with Prince that we did recently, he talked a lot about Saturn. And when he first introduced the topic, he kept going to the hexagram on our board. And, that was his way of kind of pointing the way to what he really wanted to talk about. So, I think that, if I asked about sacred geometry more, I probably would get answers, but I haven't really focused on that too much. I noticed so we'll get into this now, talking about Prince and the seance that you did. But yes, I did notice that was part of the reason why I wanted to ask you that after, about the hexagram. Okay. So, tell everybody what you did. Randy sent me a link to a posting you'd made, and I watched the entire video of you and your friend, I think her name was Ashley, doing this seance, and I have to say it was fascinating, and I kind of wished I was there with you guys asking questions. It was really interesting. I liked whatever process you've developed. Like, it made sense to me. Like, there's a rhythm to it.
and what was coming through, even the way that Prince was behaving, it seemed like, didn't surprise me. You know what I mean? Like, it seemed very true to who he was. So tell us what you were doing, why you were doing it, and what you found, what Prince had to say.
We were just doing it because, I've decided that I want to produce more content for the public with my Ouija board, because the way you're reacting is the way a lot of people react. They really enjoy stuff that we do, and I feel like I want to share it. So I asked one of my friends to come over, Ashley, and, we set up the camera, and we just decided to do Prince because he had died recently, and we were both big fans.
Yeah.
I had talked about Prince's death on the radio a couple weeks earlier, so it just seemed appropriate. I told you, not only are you not limited to dead people on the Ouija board, but mostly I've talked to other kinds of entities. Yeah. So I haven't spent a lot of time talking to dead people, but I decided to do Prince, and it actually worked out pretty well. Although, I can't even say even now that I'm sure it was him. And one of the reasons why I say that is because I would have expected him to use the number 4 instead of spelling it out and things like that. I didn't see any of that, that type of writing that he would usually use. I didn't see any of that expressed, but who knows? Maybe he's, sort of beyond that at this point. Maybe he's over it. He doesn't do that anymore. I don't know.
Right.
But he did.
He was always much more a fan of symbols than words. So yes, that is, yeah.
But whatever the spirit was, it ended up getting into some topics that I thought were really interesting, giving me a different way of looking at things. So I'm trying to remember how it all got started, but 2 things he talked about. He talked about Saturn. I guess I can't remember how the conversation progressed. It sort of bounced all over the place. So I'll try to summarize it then instead of telling it as a narrative.
Okay.
There was this aspect about Saturn where he wanted to tell us. Okay, actually, I think I do remember now how it went a little bit. Okay. Because we have to back up to, first we were asking about his death, right? And he didn't really have a lot to share about that.
Did you have a preconceived idea about his death? Did you have some story you had put together in your head about what you thought had happened, or?
No, not at all. I thought it could go either way. I mean, his death seemed odd, but not entirely, the explanation we were given seems reasonable. Right. So I just, I thought we'll ask him and see what he has to say. He gave us 2 different answers in the course of that. So originally he said he was not murdered. Later he kind of indicated that he was. But he didn't really seem to want to focus on it. So, and he had so many other interesting things to say that we just, with what he wanted to say.
So proceed.
I think this ended up, he ended up telling us about this group called the Settlers. Mm-hmm. And what he explained that is he said it was this group that controls the music and television industry, and they're the settlers because they have everyone, all these stars and celebrities. All these guys owe them money, and again, I don't know if I believe this or not, but this is just the story he told us. He said that the stars owe the settlers money, and that's why they're called the settlers, because they settle debts. When they don't get paid back, they go and threaten people and perhaps even kill them.
Yes.
In retribution. And who are these people? He said they are agents of the Saudi royal family. So I wasn't expecting that either. That came out of nowhere. I think and before that, we had been asking him, what was your purpose for being born on Earth, And, pardon me, he said that he had been sent here to put out a radio transmission. Those were his words.
Yeah.
And we said, what about, he says, the Quran. And we're like, what? That doesn't make any sense. And he starts talking about, he says, real sin is hard. Like it's hard to actually commit a real sin.
Yeah.
And he also said it further, like, also when you do a real sin, it's hard on you. Like he implied that there's great spiritual baggage that comes from committing a real sin. And then what is the real sin? He said, the real sin is murder.
Yeah.
And it all sort of, I can't remember exactly how the conversation went, but it was basically he was connecting all these things. So he was talking about murderers inspired by the Quran, which, I mean, we've seen lots of that in over the course of several decades. But this was, when we had this conversation, this was, I think, within 24 hours of the Orlando massacre that happened like the next day. So, and then as we've seen, there's just been a nonstop string of terrorist attacks in the West,
right,
from ISIS mostly, ever since then. So it's like that. This conversation we had with Prince happened right as this wave of real sin, murder committed by people inspired by the Quran, as soon as it started. So that's interesting.
Isn't that, well, Prince has always been the person talking about something before everybody else was talking about it. He was talking about musical copyright issues when nobody knew what the hell he was talking about. So that was one of the many things in this process that seemed true to who Prince actually was. There were some that didn't, like you said, but this is one of the things that he absolutely did. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And then as regarding the settlers, we asked him, I guess, why people get in debt. He said it had something to do with TV and radio ratings. So I don't know what that means. Like if you don't get the ratings, then you owe them money or something.
Or if they get you the good ratings, do you owe them money? Like, which one is it?
Yeah, I don't know. So then he made this sort of spontaneous statement. He said, REM is next to sell out.
Yeah.
And so we thought that was, I thought that's when I started suspecting this isn't really Prince. This is probably a demon of some sort reading my mind and then giving me what I want to hear, because I had just a couple of 3 months ago written a long article about symbolism I saw in REM lyrics and in videos.
Huh, I wasn't aware of that. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, it's about the theory, my theory, that Michael Stipe has believed in the flat Earth theory, long before it was popular.
Right.
And when you look at his songs and videos and even movies that have been made that have REM on the soundtrack, you can see evidence of this. But that's kind of another topic. Although Prince, we asked him if the Earth was flat, and he said yes.
Yeah.
And then and we tried to get an explanation of the cosmology, and it's still kind of
you got some stuff. I mean, it was interesting the way you did it. Didn't he say that space was fake?
He said space is fake. He said we're inside of an enclosure, and outside of, and the enclosure includes the zodiac.
Yeah.
Right. So it goes all the way up to the stars, and then outside of the enclosure is death.
Yeah.
So there's nothing beyond that, which is exactly what the Gnostics viewed the universe as being. That we're all inside these concentric spheres, really.
Yeah.
Each sphere is a heaven. Each heaven is controlled by one of the archons, which corresponds with a planet.
Yeah.
So, and Earth is in the middle.
Yep.
So that was interesting that he confirmed that. And actually, this stuff about the Gnostic cosmology, I became a lot more clear about it after the seance. So I didn't really know as much as I know now before the seance.
We can finish the seance, and then you wrote another post about that afterwards, and we can get into that after we're done talking about seance. So yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So then he told us about. So all this dovetailed somehow into telling us about Saturn. I think. Oh, because we asked who's really bankrolling all of this, and where does the money come from? And he said it comes from the test. What's the test? Okay. Long story short, he explains that it is. He explains essentially that we're living in a fake reality. Mm-hmm. That the reality is being controlled somehow from Saturn.
Right.
And basically, it sounded like he was describing an AI computer system on Saturn that is somehow putting out a signal that is hypnotizing us, keeping us in a fake reality of some sort.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means exactly, but what's interesting is that let's see, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks after this this seance happened, a video popped up in my YouTube feed, and it was David Icke talking about Saturn and how he thinks that Saturn is putting out radio waves that are creating a fake reality for us. And apparently, I've learned since that David Icke has talked about this before. I didn't know that at the time. So I just thought it was an amazing coincidence, but it turns out David Icke has talked about this before. And what's interesting, too, is that Prince has a history with David Icke. He actually invited David Icke to one of his concerts and had a conversation with him backstage and kind of told him that, he's right about a lot of things. And the implication was he's kind of right about his theory of, the reptilians controlling the world. And really what I think he meant by that is that we're living in a fake reality, which he's indicated. Yeah, he talked about at one point. He said that that when he joined the Jehovah's Witnesses and had that conversion experience, that was like waking up in the Matrix, like Neo. So we don't know exactly what Prince believed about all this, but it seems like one way or another he believed we were living in a fake reality. Yeah, and then his mentor David Icke is coming out and saying Saturn is the one controlling us. Yeah. So all this stuff, I found all of this fascinating because a lot of those similar things have been coming up for me in just my own personal journey recently and other people I've been talking to. So I've always felt like some very strong, I'm not even saying it's positive or negative connection to Saturn, but particularly when I'm dancing and doing these things, I get a lot of things that seem like information from Saturn. In fact, I tried to draw a little picture. Where did I put it? I tried to draw a little, I don't know where it went. I have this vision that I've been seeing a lot lately. And actually I saw it the same week that I read your article. And I see it on the back of my eyelids when I'm dancing. And I'm drawing it again right now because I can't. It's just a terrible drawing of it. But it's like the Masonic symbol, but a multi-dimensional Masonic symbol with Saturn in the middle and an eye up top, like an Egyptian, like the Eye of Ra or Eye of Horus kind of thing. Okay. So I can't remember if it was before the article came out with Saturn as Dreams Master of Dreamscape Reality. It was in the same week that I saw your stuff. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times what happens for me is I'll go into a party. I like techno music. I go to underground parties and when I go into the room, I'll sort of get an impression and then sort of all night I'll work with the impression and information comes with it and flesh it out. And it becomes this amazing collage of picture stuff in my head, at the end of the night. But the first thing I got when I walked into the room that night was that, and it was a kind of a pinkish purple color. And I thought, well, that's really interesting because all this stuff had been coming up and I'm seeing the Masonic symbol, Saturn in the middle, eye on top. What does that mean? And then you have the video, which I've heard David Icke talk about some of that stuff. There was also a video that came out this week. I don't know if you saw it they were able to sort of recreate or see what it looks like to see a photon of light. And it looks exactly like the shape that David Icke was describing as the sound. It's the red cross of all of these secret societies, the same symbol sort of that he was talking about in that video. Maybe I'll link to the video. I should have pulled it up so I could have showed you. It looks exactly of light what he was talking about with sound. And one of the things that I've thought for a long time, because I have so much experience being in an environment that is totally bathing in sound and light, is that's how they're controlling us completely with sound and light. And when I'm looking at this stuff on Saturn and they're showing the hexagonal shape and the different cymatics on the top, that's certainly, to me, when thinking about all this stuff, it sounds a lot like the sacred geometry of space, time, and sound, right? Mm-hmm. If Saturn is controlling time and they're sending a radio transmission, right? And it's through what we think of as space. Well, there we go. And so it was really interesting. I love the way you put all those different things into the same post. You had the seance, you had the thing with David Icke, you had the information about cymatics, you had information about David Bowie and Philip K. Dick and all of these things that were just really things that had been swirling in my mind and interrelated. And is that stuff you thought about before? Do you think of I'm sure you've gotten a lot of information about Saturn in your adventures on the other side. I can see how. Okay, we know that. Yes, Saturn is putting out radio waves. Probably all the planets and stars are putting out radio waves. Yeah. But on Saturn, it's manifesting in the shape of this hexagon at the top. So anyway, yeah, cymatics is, what is that? It's like the science of how sound moves air so as to move the molecules of things, and therefore it changes
shapes. Yeah,
it makes little geometric shapes out of things sometimes. So I can see how, in a similar way, something like that could be happening, where these, we call them planets, whatever they are putting out these radio waves, and it's creating geometry in our minds.
Yes,
that makes us think that we're seeing a world around us that is maybe entirely different than what the world is. So
that geometry in the mind may be the prism or the prism. What I'm seeing a lot of in my head looks a lot like really beautiful, colorful prism things that are like, making different perspectives on what I'm looking at. It's almost like I'm stuck inside the prism. It's very colorful. I'm looking out and it's distorting what I'm seeing. So maybe what I'm actually seeing is the architecture of the artificial intelligence program that is being run from Saturn on us. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes.
Okay.
So you're poking up out of the matrix for a while and kind of seeing how it works. Yeah. Regarding the symbolism of Saturn and how it matches up exactly with what we're talking about, Saturn is thought of as being sort of the master of illusions. This really goes back to, of course, the mythology of the wars between the Titans and the Olympian gods. The story is Saturn was, or Kronos to the Greeks, he's time, okay? He existed before creation. And the idea is that they tell the story of the golden age of Saturn, that he was the king of the world back when there was this, quote, golden age, and that everything was great because there was just one season, it was always spring, basically. Right. Nobody had to work. They just would eat the fruit from the trees, and they were running around naked and happy and free. And there's a dark side to this, however, which is that the prosperity of this era was maintained through preventing children from being born. Now, so in other words, what they're trying to symbolize there, I think, with this parable is a time in which there's time. Creation hasn't really come out of it yet, so there's not really time, space, or any matter. So there's no space for things to move around in. And that's kind of how we perceive time, right? We perceive time because things move around in space. So what we're talking about here is a struggle between this, pre-creation existence and the creation existence that wants to come out and be born and live. Right. Well, you can only keep the state of perfection that's being described in the golden age if you prevent time from happening, if you prevent the future from being born. And so the story is that King Saturn was afraid. There was a prophecy that he was going to be usurped by one of his sons. And so he would make his wife deliver their children to him as soon as they were born, and then he would swallow them. Mm-hmm. And the story is that they're still alive inside his stomach, just, sitting there. And so again, this is a symbol of just holding back something that wants to come out. Yeah. So anyway, the whole thing ended with Zeus was born, and his mother just couldn't bring herself to let this child be sacrificed too. So she substituted a stone instead, and I guess Zeus wasn't paying that much attention to the stone, and Zeus was born, and then he did. Of course, the prophecy was fulfilled. He ended up, usurping his father, and then he became the king of the gods. Olympus became the center of the god world, and Saturn and all of the other monsters and demons, gods, whatever you want to call them, that the Titans that had fought on his side against the Olympians, they got sent down into the pit, Tartarus. They got put in hell, in prison. But it's kind of like the kids were in his stomach, but they never died. Saturn is still there. He's still alive. But they describe him, for instance, Plutarch describes Saturn as being in a state of death-like dreaming sleep. Yeah. And that his dreams are affecting, the people in the world. So he's like running the show behind the scenes. Even though he's dreaming, he's subtly affecting everything in the world with his dreams. Yeah. And he even described there's this island that Saturn is on, and he goes into people's dreams and inspires them to come to his island. And then they come there, and they're sort of apprentice to him, and they learn the mysteries of the universe from him. And there's even a set period of it that you're supposed to be a student for 13 years. Mm-hmm. And afterwards you can decide whether you want to stay or not. And the Plutarch says almost everyone decides to stay because it's this perfect, wonderful place. There's no work to do. You just get to learn and enjoy yourself. So anyway, these are the aspects of Saturn, right? He is the master of dreams and illusions. Yeah. He's also a teacher. And he was the first king of, some kind of pre-creation world. But he's also symbolic of death because, of course, time is death. We all die eventually over the passage of time. And then there's this, myth about him keeping his kingdom by feeding upon the youth. And, I don't want to get into the whole thing, but I've written a couple of books about this topic too. Yeah. This is really these sort of guiding principle behind the way society is structured now, in particular the monetary system. Everything is about creating, prosperity now by taking from the future, taking from what our kids will have, indebting them, taking their resources, and again, it's the sort of thing that can't last forever, and it will always have some sort of dramatic, horrible end.
Yeah, I mean, the whole time I was thinking that this sounds an awful lot like, I was thinking two things. It sounds an awful lot like the world we're living in to a certain extent, but also when you're describing the island and going there for knowledge, it sounds to me, from my experience, I'm not with that sounds like where I'm going in my head.
Yes, exactly. That's why I brought it up. Yeah.
Yes. And that, and I would say that for a number of years I was enamored with that and totally trapped in that to a certain extent. And it made functioning on the outside world really difficult because it was amazingly beautiful space in there. And just for the last year, I've been intentionally not going to that space at all. When I dance, I'll check the picture out, but I don't play with it anymore. I look and see what's going on. I don't play with it. And it's amazing how much more effective I've been in my life since I stopped doing that. Since I stopped sort of playing along and able to, I had all these beautiful things, this knowledge and ideas were coming to me, but I wasn't doing anything that was helpful to myself really or to anyone else in my real life. And when I sort of decided to step away from that, even though at times I miss that terribly, because it's beautiful and it's wonderful and it's perfect and whatever it is, but it's all in my head to a certain extent. And it occurred to me that I was being controlled by something completely outside of myself in that space. So it's interesting that as long as we stay in that space, there is no making things better. There's just, trying to suspend the now by stealing from the future. And then when I've gotten out of this space, I feel, much more effective at trying to make a little change, whatever affects things in whatever way I can to make it so that I'm not stealing from other people's lives and future. And not that I was stealing before, but you understand what I'm saying. So I think that was a great summary. And that was when I read the way you would put all that together, I was like, wow, man, that's exactly it. So I love that. Okay. So that was excellent. What do you, one of the things I found the most interesting, again, I mentioned this, was how sort of weird and evasive Prince, as you were talking to Prince, was being during this thing. Do you find that often?
Oh, yeah.
But in some ways, that's who Prince was. Just when you thought you understood who he was sort of something else, and then something else, and then go back to being a thing you thought he was before, and whatnot. So I thought that was really interesting. So that's interesting that you find that with others as well. Tell us a little bit. You also mentioned some things about David Bowie in that article, in that initial article. Actually, no. and about the idea of the radio transmission and how, okay, explain that a little bit, because I think that'll give people like a visual who aren't completely on board with what we're talking about here.
Okay, well, I mentioned David Bowie in an article that I wrote that was about this seance.
Yeah.
And just because, actually, we mentioned David Bowie in the seance just briefly, and here's why. I told you that Prince had said that his purpose on Earth was to put out a radio transmission, and then he went on to say that it had something to do with the Quran.
Yeah.
But that made me think immediately about the movie Man Who Fell to Earth,
Right.
because that's what that's about. It's about an alien that comes to Earth, and then, and I think it was in the movie, it's, you know, an accident. He doesn't want to be there. I can't remember, but he doesn't want to be there. And so he's trying to get back home, but he has to, that's right. He's getting water for his home planet or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, part of it is that he has to become a billionaire. He creates this huge empire in like sound technology, and he buys a bunch of radio stations. And the purpose of all this is just to put out this radio transmission, because he knows that his wife on the other planet will eventually hear the transmission that he puts out. So what he does, he puts out a record, and it gets played on the radio, music, some kind of music. And of course, I'm sure in the story, it's like, it's popular because it's a cool song, but really the whole purpose of putting it together is just so that his wife on the other planet could hear it. Now, that is connected to Philip K. Dick and his sort of autobiographical story called Valis.
Yeah.
That in that book, he had, let's see, it was fictional, but it was really about his own life, right? But there was this fictional aspect in the story. He said that there was a character who was, let's see, he was the leader of some kind of commune, right, in California, and people in the commune also had a band, and then they put out a rock musical movie. And so the character in Philip K. Dick's book first sees the movie, and the movie reminds him of experiences he himself has had where he's been hearing messages in his head. Yeah. In the movie, it all kind of corresponds to the messages he's been hearing in his head. What the movie is about is an alien trying to put out a radio transmission message to, I guess, some kind of some intelligence out on the outside of our world, and I think it has to do with there was some kind of coup with the government, and anyway, now I'm trying to remember all the aspects of the story, but again, it's the idea is just that that you could be communicating to something besides just the people here if you put out a radio or television transmission, or even on the internet. In fact, I think Prince told us, he gave us some instruction that we were supposed to post an image on the internet about Saturn. Yeah. And he even told us about this YouTube channel that we had to look at, called Round Saturn's Eye. I still don't know what it all is supposed to mean, but this is an interesting way of looking at pop culture, music, and TV. Like, what if a lot of it sometimes is a message to someone that there's no way you would know who it was or what it means, because it's like some off-world intelligence. I don't know. I see that theory that you just put out as being entirely possibly a true scenario of what David Bowie was doing, of what Prince may have been doing, of what was happening to Philip K. Dick. You know what I mean? I can certainly relate to that story that Philip K. Dick is talking about, channeling things and feeling like some kind of intelligence is communicating with you and whatnot. So that's, David, go ahead. He thought that the reason why Philip K. Dick came up with all this stuff about the radio transmission, he was allegorizing the Gnostic story about, again, I'll have to go into this really long explanation. I'll try to make it short. But the idea is that in Gnosticism, the God that created this world is not a good guy necessarily. And there's a world beyond that called the Pleroma, that is like real reality. And the story is that, and then there's a real God out there too.
Right.
And so the story is that the real God sort of lost a piece of himself inside this creation, and this creation is false and a prison and illusion. And so, and that piece of himself, it's kind of analogous to the, the idea of Jesus being Son of God, right? So, and in fact, some of the Gnostics were Christians, and that's how they viewed Jesus.
Yeah.
So, but not all of them called this figure Jesus. So another term for it is primal man. So the primal man is trapped inside this prison, but his real father, his real, world that he came from, and the real reality is on the outside. So
it sounds reasonable to me.
He's always, so the story is about, and once he gets down here, he sort of becomes amnesiac. He forgets where he is and where he came from. And then someone else has to come and remind him. Someone else has to come from the outside and remind him, wake him up, and then they liberate the world. Is how it's supposed to end the story. They break all of us out of the prison. But anyway, so Philip K. Dick was thinking that now in this world that we're in now, presently, we are receiving messages from the outside. And there are people inside here trying to talk to the outside. And, he thought that, sometimes when you look at TV or radio or movies or the newspaper, there will be messages in there that were meant for the people, for not even really people, but the spirits, I guess, on the outside. Yeah. So, Anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt what you were saying.
No,
I wanted to make that point.
No, that was I'm in sync with that. Not only do I like what you said, but that sounds perfectly reasonable to me. Like, that sounds like, all of these things you're describing that are supposedly, myths and this kind of stuff, it sounds like a better explanation of what's going on than the official story we're being handed, right? So, especially with someone like David Bowie, when you look at his work, like, he was telling us who he was all along.
That he was an alien?
I think he's been telling us a lot of things, but I think he is a lot of things. But, like, one of the things that I thought when he died, especially with that last piece of music he put out in the strange video. And did you ever watch, we've told the story before on the show, but since, I don't know if you're aware, did you ever watch the TV show Fringe?
You know what? I only got a couple episodes into that and I had to abandon it, but tell me.
It's a great show. I suggest you watch it because there's so much stuff. There's so much stuff there that's true and real. But there was a character in the first two seasons named David Robert Jones, which also happens to be David Bowie's real name, David Robert Jones.
Okay.
And David Robert Jones was a character who first was basically like jumping like through space and time. Like he broke out of a prison by basically, jump rooming to somewhere else. Okay. And over the course of the two seasons, he began jumping back and forth between, there was like another universe in Fringe, and he was jumping back and forth between the universes. And every time he would do this, that disassembly and reassembly of the molecular structure of his body would make it so his face was like almost like disintegrating. And by the end, he was holding his face together with the bandage that looked exactly like what David Bowie was wearing in that final video that he did. Okay.
Ooh.
So, right. So when I put all that stuff together, I'm like, Fringe is great. There's so much stuff like that in Fringe. You should really watch it if you have a chance. But I was like, so my thing was like, wait a second, David Bowie, they were telling us, and he's, sort of confirming that he's a time traveler, or able to move through space and time in ways that are different than we are. You know what I mean? And if you look at him, one of the things that was always interesting to me about David Bowie was, besides from the fact that he looked strange, but always a different strange. Like sometimes he looked like an alien. Sometimes he almost looked like an animal. Sometimes he looked like he was kind of falling apart. And the same thing could be said for like Michael Jackson. Like some of these people, right? And so he also to me, I've long thought that he was doing some kind of space and time travel, and that, moonwalking was something more than what we think it was. You know what I mean? Like he had part of his ability to move like that came from sort of a different feeling of space and time. But check out the Fringe thing. I don't know. I just, that whole thing with the bandages on the face and the name being the same and the moving, what if that's something David Bowie was doing? What if he was traveling back and forth? What if he was sending messages and occasionally, it seems reasonable to me.
Well, here's another way of looking at that too. Okay. You remember in Man Who Fell to Earth that he had this skin that he was wearing, basically, so that he
Right.
would look like a human. And then I think it got accidentally stuck on him, or at least his eyes got stuck.
Yeah.
In a photograph of him. I'm just barely remembering this, but okay, what you were describing about David Bowie. Here's how I read that, or what I would, if I was going to take that seriously, where you're saying his body is falling apart, and he's symbolizing it like a suit that needs to be replaced.
Yes.
Or like a snake that sheds its old skin and gets a new one. Well, this is something that alchemists supposedly are able to do, and also you'll find a lot of horror stories.
Yeah.
About witches and warlocks that do things like this. So the idea is that you know how to jump bodies, basically, and take over someone else's body. So you like a vampire too. You can live for so long in one body, but once it starts to deteriorate, you need to get a new one. And, in the horror stories, like one is called Mephisto Waltz. It's a movie. And so you can watch it. It's all about this topic. The guy has he's a warlock, and also he's fond of playing the piano. He's very good at playing piano. So he's about to die, and he wants to shed that body and get a new one, which requires, essentially murdering the person that is in that body that you want to get. And so he's shopping around for someone who has the perfect hands to play piano, so he can keep playing piano. I take this stuff kind of seriously.
Yeah.
I think that this is obviously something the elite of the world are very interested in, being able to live as long as possible. Of course, like anybody, you would want to stay, in the body you're in as long as you can comfortably. Yeah. When that gets to be too uncomfortable, the elite of the world are looking for any way they can to keep going. And, a lot of them are interested in the occult. A lot of them are involved in secret societies. I wouldn't doubt if some of them at least have tried, think they know how to jump bodies.
Yeah.
And frankly, I wouldn't doubt if someone actually does know how to do it. And maybe someone like David Bowie.
Yeah, I love that alchemical esoteric view of it, which also then ties to what's going on with technology and, the secret cloning kinds of technology, things that are really going on. They're kind of, it seems to me like they're creating a technological process to try and do things that maybe they either haven't been able to accomplish through the alchemical process or hasn't worked the way they wanted to. So, I noticed that. You notice that there's always trying to achieve some technological version of an esoteric process that has, been done throughout time.
Yes. Well, okay. AI is really, they're trying to create the perfect golem, I think. Yeah. Which is an artificial person. Another term for it is homunculus. So the idea you can create a robot. In fact, that word also, robot, is connected to the same history, the same idea. Creating the first robots were actually just sort of mechanical. Robots, obviously they weren't computerized, but they were mechanical things made of metal that, gave off the illusion almost, at least to people at that time, of being alive. Yeah. But there was a magical connection there where sorcerers claimed that they could animate these things and put spirits into them. So this is, I think, of course, it's all part of the quest to live forever. Yeah. So if you can't live in a living body, well, at least, maybe a robot or something. Yeah. And then, like I said, the ideal is to just stay in the body you're in as long as you can. Because I don't think also that it's necessarily comfortable to change from one body to another. Yeah. I think it's a very traumatic process for everyone involved. So, they want to stay with the bodies they have as long as possible. I don't know if you saw this headline a couple days ago. Peter Thiel, the guy who founded PayPal, wants to go around harvesting blood from young people and selling it to old people so they can have transfusions, and it will enliven them and make them feel better and help them live longer. So I saw there was a headline about something like that. I never got a chance to watch the video or read the article, but so that's interesting. And it's gross. Well, I mean, this is, again, this is sort of ancient, occult idea that, as it turns out, is perfectly valid scientifically, that you can get vigor from the youth by literally taking it from their blood.
Isn't that also why like some elite groups and secret societies have cannibalism and sacrificing children and eating them and things like that? Isn't it a similar kind of thing? There being the fetuses of babies and Pepsi products, like it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, that's the theory. And I mean, once you look at the headlines, you see these things pop up every now and then. Once you're aware of it, you see it everywhere, and you realize, it's not a joke. It's serious. They are doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
And it goes back to what we're talking about Saturn eating his children,
right?
Gaining something by taking it away from the youth. They do this in numerous ways, and it's interesting. I mean, that's just the way this world we're in works. I think that a principle that is valid in one context will often be valid in other contexts as well. So we're talking about economic eating of the future, or literally eating children. It's all the same. It all is connected to the same principle.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think this is a good time for us to take a break, and we're going to go on intermission. We'll have a track called Saturn by the artist Simic. We'll be back in just a minute. We are back. Okay, before we move on, just wanted to give you a chance to tell people about your website and where they can find your work.
Sure. My website is tracytwyman.com, which if you're watching this, you probably know how to spell, but it's TracyTwyman.com. And, if you Google that, you'll easily find it. And then all of my books are on Amazon. So I've got about, I think, 5 print books so far, and several Kindle books also. So, that's how you find me. That's where my stuff is.
All right, cool. So we're going to get into talking about some other topics that Tracy's been covering lately. And she had an interesting post about Trump and Clinton possibly both being rapists. So why don't you get into what you've been talking about, Tracy?
Sure. Okay. Just to start off, because of course it's necessary, because people are so, trigger happy, like they get triggered by everything.
Right.
I'm an anarchist. I do not vote, so I do not care.
Me too.
I care, but I'm not going to participate. I have no, what do they call it? I don't have a horse in this race.
Dog in the fight. Yeah, me either. I'm an anarchist too, so you're in good company.
Okay. But I mean, I've had, I guess, an axe to grind against the Clintons for a long time. I hate them. I hate them a lot. I grew up in that era. And I became a journalist right during the time when a lot of the Clinton dirty laundry was really just starting to come to light, I think. Of course, we all knew, even during his first campaign, we knew about Jennifer Flowers, and we kind of got a hint that, he's, he likes the ladies, he likes to cheat on his wife. But only, it took a few years before the real dirt started coming out, and it was coming out basically on talk radio at that time. So we're talking about mid-90s, and I was, 18 years old, I think. This is what I did. I voted twice in my life, and that was the first time I voted in that election. At any rate, I remember writing several articles I told you about that newspaper I worked for when I was a teenager. I remember writing some stuff about Clinton, just starting to realize, that he had been involved with all of this cocaine trafficking for the CIA when he was governor. And so I interviewed, at that time, I interviewed Larry Nichols, who was one of the whistleblowers. He had put out the Clinton Chronicles back then. It was like a videotape that was being passed around. It was a documentary about Bill Clinton and all of his crimes. And that included the stuff about killing people that were witnesses to the cocaine trafficking, and beating up and threatening people that he had been sexually involved with that he wanted to keep quiet, or people who had witnessed that. So, that's what I knew about Clinton, back in the day. And I just couldn't believe when Hillary Clinton has been acting ever since they got out of office like she's just totally entitled to be president. Right. I don't understand why people go along with it. Like that makes sense to them. And she, I guess, has had the attitude that nothing's going to stand in her way. I mean, she's even kind of, obviously, she knows she's going to be president someday, or that's not what she's planning. And yes, she commits all of these crimes in broad daylight.
It's so crazy.
This is the way the Clintons are, okay?
Yeah.
They expect every person they deal with to fall on their sword for them at any moment. Anytime there's any problem, they never take responsibility for it. And not only that, they assume that everyone around them is going to sacrifice themselves in order to cover up and, make everything good. And strangely, that's what seems to happen.
Yeah.
So recently I interviewed this guy, his name is Robert Morrow, and he wrote a book with Roger Stone, who was one of the main, main campaign advisors for Trump.
He's on Alex Jones every week talking about about Donald Trump. So yes, he's very, very much involved in that. Yeah.
Right. So yes, and so they wrote this book, I guess, before the Trump campaign really got off the. Well, I don't know. I'm trying to remember, but what's key to know is the book came out before certain allegations about Donald Trump came out. So when these allegations came out, the allegations were that Donald Trump raped a 13-year-old girl at Jeffrey Epstein's house, or not on the airplane, I think at one of his houses.
Yeah. On the little Virgin Islands or whatever, right? Isn't that what they're called? Yeah.
Okay. And so, there's an affidavit, I think, about this, or, this girl has made some kind of statement in court, and there's a witness who also corroborates her story and has made a statement in court. So, that's interesting. And what's really interesting is, of course, Bill Clinton is also tied to Jeffrey Epstein, and actually went, on airplane rides on his notorious private plane that was supposedly full of underage girls that everyone was having sex with. So anyway, so I interviewed this guy, and Robert Morrow, co-author with Roger Stone on this book called The Clintons' War on Women.
Right.
All about Bill Clinton, raping women, and then Bill and Hillary trying to cover it up.
Yeah.
But it turns out that Robert Morrow believes the stories about Donald Trump. He believes that Donald Trump is a rapist also. So, so you can see this interview if you want to. You can go to my YouTube channel and you'll see this. It's about an hour long, and it's a video interview like we're doing here. The guy has a mouth on him. He swears a lot, and he also says, terms that are no longer acceptable about homosexuals. Yeah. So
I'm familiar with Robert Morrow. I've heard him before. Yeah.
So, it's like, that's my warning to you, I guess. If that bothers you, well, either deal with it or don't watch it now. Yeah. But anyway, I think, truth trumps everything. I wanted to hear what he had to say no matter what. So I think that he's got a very interesting story. He'll tell you all about, the crimes that Bill Clinton has been involved in. And he also has a lot to say about Donald Trump and why he thinks that this allegation is true. And then that, obviously that just really calls into question the integrity of this election, because we know that Donald Trump and Hillary and Bill, they all know each other. They've been photographed together. They even talked together shortly before he announced his campaign run. So, I guess a lot of people are wondering,
what the hell is really going on here?
Is Donald Trump basically a foil to get Hillary in office? And I don't know, but it's really a question of how much money does Donald Trump actually have? Is he lying about how much money he has? Because that's key to whether or not he's being pushed around by anyone or whether he's trying to help anyone. I would think that if he has enough money, he would not be motivated to do anything for anyone else, including the Clintons. And, his motivations would be exactly what they seem to be then, that, he wants to be president and he's going to do his best to get there, and he's going to use his money and everything else. But you got to kind of wonder, it's like Robert Morrow. I asked him, why do you have to say, all these offensive words? How does that help you get your message across? Same thing with Donald Trump. Why, does he have to be so belligerent and offensive? Yeah. I don't know. And it calls into question, what is his real motive for doing this? So because I live here, I hope Donald Trump is for real. I hope the rape allegation isn't true. I don't know. But, it doesn't look good. So
it is, it is so weird. Like, absolutely. His behavior often makes it look like he's working for Hillary, because he's just acting so stupid that any person who has one one bit of sanity might think that Hillary Clinton is a better option. She's not. Like this, to me, we're in this situation where, like, I don't understand how anybody can take not only our political system, but the concept of government seriously anymore at all when these are when these are the choices. If this is supposedly a legitimate system, how is this in any way rational, reasonable, moral, or at all, period? So for me, like you, I don't have a dog in the fight. Like I don't, I recognized, some time ago that, at first I recognized just how ridiculous and criminal government was. And then I recognized that it was, very much like religion. And if people would stop believing in it, maybe it would go away. So hurry up, people. You know what I mean? But it is, I agree with you. I live here. And to me, Clinton seems worse than Trump. You know what I mean?
Yes. I mean, okay. And the fact that he's a rapist is pretty bad. But what we're doing here, there's the concept of the Overton window, right?
Yep. Moving it.
This is, what's considered acceptable in society. Certain amounts of rape, child rape by the elites are considered acceptable now because everybody does it. So all the elite, normal people do not do this, but people that are in positions of power for some reason are all having sex with children. I don't know why.
Yeah. I mean, actually, what's really scary is it's coming out more and more that there's a lot of even normal people who are doing this. Like it's, it's weird. Just last night. So I was a gymnast, and just this last 24 hours, there's come out this huge story about all these coaches that the USA Gymnastics Federation basically hid the files on, who have now been convicted of molesting and abusing children and whatnot. And some of that hits home for me because it's something that I had suspected and thought that I had seen some of and whatnot. But it's everywhere. Like everywhere I turn now, people are coming out about having been molested as a child, or having, or people that you would never have suspected have now been caught doing it. And we are living in a profoundly sick society. And I think the fact that these are our choices is so perfectly represents that. But the reason, for a couple of reasons, I think Donald Trump is better is the Overton window that you were speaking of, but also I think, during this last 8 years with Obama, a lot of people who are to the more conservative side have woken up to the truth about a lot of things. And I think having Donald Trump as president would force the liberals to get their heads out of their asses. And I think a lot of things that I've been saying about government that I come from a family of liberal people. So they think I'm crazy when I'm saying these things. But if Donald Trump is president, I bet you suddenly they'll agree with all the things that I've been saying about government. So, right. So to me, I just think that we have this choice that is really a choice between fascism and fascism. You know what I mean? But one is one is provenly super duper violently corrupt and criminal, and the other is just lacking in integrity, morals, and taste to a certain extent, and maybe a criminal as well. But the whole thing, the fact that, people, if you insist on voting, to me, this, voting is consenting to this system, and so I don't consent and I don't vote even, I'm whatever. But Jill Stein or Gary Johnson or someone is better than these two. But since this is what we're dealing with, I don't know. It's awful to think, and I thought it was really. I didn't know. I've heard Robert Morrow several times on other programs, and I knew he had written that book. I wasn't aware that he had this view of Donald Trump as well. So it was really interesting to see that, and I think you're the only one who's really done an interview with him about that.
I am, I think. And, I tried to circulate it. Facebook was killing the link. They wouldn't, it's up there, but they're not propagating.
We'll link to it.
Their algorithm is trying to hide it. And in fact, I've experienced a lot of that with Hillary stuff lately.
Yeah.
Like that. You saw this news story about, there's this mural in Melbourne, Australia. It shows Hillary in this bathing suit. It's got American stripes and stars on it, and then there's money in her waistband, tucked in her waistband. So this is a mural on the side of a building. This artist is known for doing graffiti art.
Yeah,
and then the building owner consented to have this thing there. Well, the city council of Melbourne, or whatever little township near Melbourne he's in, had basically forced this business owner to have the guy cover it up. He ended up putting a niqab on Hillary to cover up her flesh, because they said the city council's objection was that it was inappropriate to show a woman like that. So that's weird. And it seemed odd. It almost seemed like, Hillary Clinton's people called up the city council in Australia, in this town in Australia, which is why,
I've heard this thing of like censorship and like, I've heard more extreme stories with the Clintons of like hiring trolls to do stuff than of any other single politician or corporation or it's like they're like Monsanto. Like Monsanto will hire for every one person who says something negative about Monsanto, they'll hire somebody to like troll the shit out of them for the rest of their living days.
Yes.
Clintons seem to be like that, both on a very advanced scale, like killing people who witness things and won't go along, but also on this. Anytime someone says anything bad, can press on somebody to delete to make the algorithm not show their video or cover up what that. It is crazy. It is crazy how deep it goes, and like why they even care about what's being said about them at a low level if they're really so powerful. It's very strange. It's very disturbing.
Well, but okay, Hillary recently said, I think it was her or some campaign organ, someone from her campaign, said that they were relying on satire to bring down Donald Trump. So they're, and it's, because they're not going to bring up rape allegations about Jeffrey Epstein, and there really isn't a lot else to say about Donald Trump.
If they really wanted to squash him, and he wasn't working for them, they would bring up the rape allegations.
Yes, but obviously
because that indicts Bill too. Then so.
She can't even, she said something about rape victims when she was at her speech at the convention. And of course, everyone, sees them like, lady, you can't talk about rape. Look at you. Look at what your husband did. Look what you did to the rape victims. So, there's so many of these topics that she can't be taken seriously on now because of, her past. Just the fact that she and her husband both have lied.
Seriously.
Well, exactly. That's a good point. She had the director of the FBI come out a couple of weeks ago and say she's too incompetent mentally to know what a classified document is,
right?
Or to understand how to run email or anything. So,
if you or I were caught with, even just if we're in danger if we download a classified document from WikiLeaks, of possibly some reporters can be in trouble for things like that. So this whole thing, this whole other like level of things that are acceptable for the Clintons as opposed to anyone else in the world. How is Bradley Manning in jail and Julian Assange stuck in an embassy? Whether you think he's for real or not is not the issue. That's what we're looking at in the world. And she can do this, and it's okay. Oh, it was just negligence. Well, why isn't it just negligence for them too?
Well, it was odd, the press conference that Comey gave. I watched the whole thing live. I'm sitting there. He kept building the case against her. And I'm thinking, wow, it's finally going to happen. Someone's finally going to get her. And then he makes this bizarre statement at the end. But no reasonable prosecutor would bring this case against her. And then he even said before that, well, other people who did this wouldn't get away with it. He essentially said that. So... But he didn't come out and say, why is this person immune? Yeah. And really, why is she immune? Okay, she's the wife of a former president. It's not going to bring down, society for her to face a little bit of justice. But I guess they consider the whole left-right paradigm, the two parties, that whole thing is just so precious and important to them.
It's kind of like when they said we can't bring down the banks because they're too big to fail.
Yes.
It's like the whole world will fall apart if we bust the people who are actually committing the crimes. So we just have to bust the people who are the minions a little bit here and there, and the people who aren't committing crimes except for anyone against themselves, we'll throw them in jail for the rest of their life. You know what I mean?
I had been hopeful for a while. I saw this thing developing. I thought, hey, this election is going to destroy that whole system. The Republican Party's falling apart. And look, what if
look at the Democratic Party. The way they censored the coverage of the Democratic National Convention was crazy.
Yes, and we all know, they rigged it against Bernie. And not only that, I was thinking, well, heck, Hillary could do two things. She could die or she could get arrested before the election. And then what would they do? And one way or another, that's going to end up, if that were to happen, it would destroy the party, I think, because they've put all their eggs in this basket.
The party needs to be destroyed. Yeah, the party needs to be destroyed. That whole nonsense with Debbie Wasserman Schultz who being like having to step down because she rigged it for Hillary, but then going to work for Hillary. Like that's another one of these things where they're not ashamed to admit, yep, we did it, and we're gonna, rub your faces in it. It's like it's crazy.
I wonder what she's thinking. I mean, did she realize this before, and how does she feel about it now? To know every single email she's ever sent is public now. I think. Probably, at least in the last 10 years, every email or, last few years. I mean, who knows where that ends too, because obviously there's been no attempt at security surrounding these people. And again, I think it comes from the arrogance, right? They assume everyone around them is going to cover for them. So they don't even have to put a firewall around their, or whatever they call it. They don't even have to protect their email.
They have to encrypt their emails. They're like, it's crazy. Did you see that video of her that came out last week where she was like having some like weird, like convulsion, almost like, her programming malfunctioned or something like that. And it looked like she was like possessed by the devil for a minute. Her head was like, she looked like she liked it though, man. Did you see that?
I did, and I think Paul Joseph Watson put out a good video a couple days ago where he's theorized that, what was it, some stroke she had a few years ago? There was some kind of a medical incident she had. She was in the hospital for a while. She fell, yeah. She hit her head and had some kind of thing, yeah. So he explained it that everything that she's been doing that's weird since then in public is an example of that, is a typical side effect, after effect of having such an experience. So the convulsions, and there's a couple of videos of her doing, what looks like epilepsy, having a fit. And then there's also maniacal laughter that goes on for a long time and seems inappropriate. She does that a lot, but more so in the last few years than ever. So, I mean, she was always a hothead. She's always been, verbally and physically abusive to her husband and everyone else around her. Yeah. So she's already mentally unstable, but it's possible that this medical stuff happened, that, she's completely lost her mind. And we know that Huma had said in one of these emails that she often gets confused. I'll have to remind her about her appointment in the morning because, she forgets.
That maniacal sort of demonic laughter, I first noticed when she laughed about having killed Gaddafi. He saw he died. It seemed to start from then, and then the hitting the head incident after it was, like that something changed. I mean, it's always been evil and bad and whatever, but something changed to like almost what seems like outright demonic possession and just like behavior like that is almost absolutely unhuman at about that point in 2012, 11, 12, 13, something like that. I don't know. Okay. So yeah, so it's fascinating, and we're in so much trouble. We're in trouble.
And me personally, or the country, the world.
The country, not me. Not we personally. Maybe we're in trouble too, but it's all right.
Well, I was nervous when I put the Robert Murrow interview out. I made several backups of it, and I sent it to friends to make sure that if something happened to me, this would come out. Because I mean, it's not like I'm breaking a story. Yeah, it was all available information, but like you've described, they feel the need to aggressively persecute anyone who tells the truth about them, even if it's a known truth.
The reason it might be more dangerous for you is because you're the only person I saw cover that topic, but you're also not a quote unquote right wing nut. Although I'm sure people will say that you are. You're clearly not. You know what I mean? Like you don't talk a lot about politics. You know what I mean? Right. That's not your main. And you're not pushing Trump. You're not pushing. You don't. That's not something people think of when they think of you. Oh, yeah, she's a right winger. You know what I mean? So it's more dangerous when information comes out from somebody who has a more, just historical. You're looking at things through like trying to keep track of what's going on in history here. So but no, that's it's screwing with the Clintons is dangerous. Even no matter what level you're at, it is. So,
I thought that that interaction that what's her name on the airplane? What's the lady's name?
Loretta Lynch. Let's talk about
Loretta Lynch. Okay.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I like your little blip about that too, and your conversation with your father. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad. He's sort of has this insight that kind of cuts through the crap sometimes. Where it sees things in a clearer way than other people. And so I was talking to him about the weird meeting on the airplane.
Yeah.
I was talking to him about this before Comey came out with his statement. So we still didn't know how this was going to end, but obviously they had this meeting.
Yeah.
And she came out and said they talked about grandchildren. And, so everyone's theorizing, well, actually what happened is Bill got on the plane and bribed her and or threatened her, to let Hillary off. Well, my dad immediately thought, well, that's not even necessary. He came on the plane, out of nowhere, and she wouldn't have expected that. All of a sudden, former president shows up on her airplane on the tarmac. I mean, who does that? That's weird.
Yeah.
So already you're kind of off put. You're like relaxing, and all of a sudden the president's there, and you can't really say no, or the former president. And she probably felt like she couldn't say no, even though she should have. But she was taken by surprise, and then he's standing there in front of her saying, hey, I love my grandchildren so much. They're great. What about yours? I don't know what he said, but
totally implied threat. Yeah.
But here's the thing. Bill and Hillary have hired people in the past to threaten people that for one reason or another are threatening to them, such as the example I gave in the article that on my website is Kathleen Willey, who was groped by Bill Clinton in the Oval Office, and she didn't even try to do anything about it, but I guess she told a few people and word got around. And so
her cat and stuff like that. Yeah.
So what happened is, she was going to get, deposed for the Paula Jones case. Yeah. And, so they could find out what happened to her and make a case that this is the kind of guy he is. Well, so Bill Clinton hired some thug to come threaten her. And she had her cat disappear, her tires got slashed, a bunch of other stuff that already happened, and she was already kind of suspicious about that. And then some guy pretending to be a jogger shows up at her house and says, starts talking about how's your cat? That was he was a good old cat, wasn't he? Did you ever get your tires fixed? And then he talks about her kids. Then he talks about her neighbor and her neighbor's kids, and mentions them all by name. And then at the end of it, he says, "You're just not getting the message, are you?" Okay, so she knew that was a threat against her and her children. Yeah. And he was taking credit saying he had already killed her cat. Yeah. This is the kind of people the Clintons are, and they have a reputation. Everyone in D.C. knows this about them. Okay, so when Bill Clinton shows up on your airplane and starts talking about grandkids out of the blue, and you've got a case, pending with his wife, it's obvious what he's there for. And the threat is implied. He does not have to say it. Yeah, So it's very possible it just went exactly how he said. We talked about grandchildren, and that's it. Well, that's what she said. She told Congress that there was a witness there. Her husband was there, and flight attendants were there. So she's probably telling the truth. Yeah. But she's not telling the truth about how she took it or the reason why she let Hillary off. And we don't know what they did to Comey, but they probably did something to him too. Yeah, because he seemed to have been fairly respected and thought fairly highly of in terms of his having good integrity and stuff before that. And then he just blew his entire history of having good integrity out the water with what he did. But notice he spent all that time at the press conference making the case. Yes, making the case. And then saying that anyone else would be prosecuted. So it was almost like he was laying it out there for the next person, because I predict, of course, he's going to resign shortly. He's giving it a little time so that it won't look too suspicious, but pretty soon he's going to decide that he needs to spend more time with his family. Yeah. And someone else will take over. And it'd be interesting. I mean, here's the thing. If Donald Trump was really independent, then Hillary should be afraid that if he gets to be president, he's going to do something to bring justice to her. Yeah. She's not really acting like she's afraid. She's never acted like she's afraid. True. I don't know what it means, but yeah. Yeah, I saw her on Charlie Rose a few weeks ago, right after Comey had said they weren't going to prosecute her. And Charlie Rose is left-leaning and generally someone I would consider to be in support of her. But I was actually impressed that he was trying to pick at her a little bit. I mean,
softball way, but more than I expected. And she just, like, she wouldn't give an inch, like, that she never does anything wrong. She, you know, he was trying to even get her to admit that it was in, like, bad judgment or bad whatever. And she won't even do that. You should have watched the way she was trying to use words to control him. And this is one person, Charlie Rose is a master at using words to control the people he interviews. And so you're watching this, like, it was like hard to watch. It was almost like watching somebody have like a seizure or Tourette syndrome, watching the back and forth here. But it was like a battle of semantics. You know what I mean? Do you remember when she first started making her, self-defense statements about the email? She said something like, there is no classified information. Right.
There is no classified information. She's doing the exact same thing her husband did about the meaning of the word is.
Yeah.
I'll bet you.
Yeah.
It's fall to the carpet again. She'll bring that out. She'll say, oh, well, I was only talking about the present tense. I mean, and then she'll just wait for the person to, push her in a corner again. That's what they do. It's like gaslighting the entire country. Yeah. They'll just keep saying something totally preposterous. Yeah. Even though nobody believes them, they just stay the course, and somehow they end up never receiving any consequences. Because I don't know if it was in the Charlie Rose thing or what, but in a recent interview she did, she even said that the FBI cleared her, exonerated her, and said that she hadn't made any false statements.
All right, she lied.
She lied about saying that she didn't lie when they did. Lie that she lied.
She couldn't be satisfied with the fact that she'd gotten away with it. She had to go back and rewrite history in the way that she sees everything, because she can do whatever she wants. And it is funny. Yes, it does depend on what your interpretation or definition of the word is, which for some reason, I don't know why. I don't even know why I'm saying this. It's off topic, but I always found it interesting that ISIS is too.
Ah, yes.
I love wordplay, and I learned to pay. I used to just love doing it, but I've learned to pay more attention to it. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things, and I don't know why I thought that, but that's just the first thing that came to my mind is ISIS depends on what is too. Right? Okay. So the last thing I wanted to get into, you have an interesting post on your site about. That refers back to an interview you did with somebody who named Prince Michael, I think was his name, right? Who had some ideas about an independent Scottish monarchy. I'm assuming that you brought that back up because of what was going on with Brexit and the things being said about Scotland. Tell us a little bit about that, why you wrote about that, and then I have something interesting I wanted to add to that. Okay.
Prince Michael, I interviewed him 1998, I think, for Dagobert's Revenge. He is a guy claiming to be the rightful heir to the throne of Scotland. He says that he's from this, quote, royal house of Stuart, and they spell their name a little bit differently than the Stuart royal family, but they claim that they're the same. It's just a different way of spelling it. But he ended up getting torn apart by the press a few years later. Someone actually investigated his claims. He ended up running back. He's from Belgium, and he came to Scotland to try to become king. He's lived there for years, building up his reputation, but he ended up just getting destroyed by the newspapers because they said that his genealogy was fake and stuff like that. But anyway, at the time, I interviewed him about his claims. He wanted to be the King of Scotland, and then and for Scotland to secede from the UK and to join the EU on its own. So, at that time, I had never heard of that idea. And, I was surprised I guess I didn't think about it before, but yeah, of course, they could be part of the EU without having to be part of the UK. I thought that was, an interesting idea. Now, Prince Michael ended up, over the course of the next several years, I ended up learning a lot more about him. So he was involved with this group called the Dragon Court at one point, and then he ended up leaving the Dragon Court. But I too was involved with this organization called the Dragon Court, which is it's a loose conglomeration of people all claiming to be from certain royal families. Not the main scions of these families, but just people who happen to have that blood in them. And the leader of this group at that time was a guy named Nicholas DeVere, who I became friends with, and he asked me to help him publish a book. He had been, actually, okay, if your viewers are familiar at all with Lawrence Gardner, who wrote a series of books about the Grail and the Grail bloodline and things like that. So Lawrence Gardner and Nicholas DeVere used to be writing partners, and Lawrence Gardner used to be part of the Dragon Court. And Lawrence Gardner said that most of his material for his first few books on those subjects came from Nicholas DeVere. In fact, they wrote, basically Lawrence Gardner's first book was Nicholas DeVere's book, and he sort of stole it from him. They ended up having a falling out because of this. I'm telling you all this because Prince Michael was part of the Dragon Court, and the titles that he uses, like he claims to be the real leader of the Knights Templar in modern times and things like that. He's falling back on the stuff these titles that were given to him by the Dragon Court. Right. But he left the Dragon Court, but he still uses the titles. It's really bizarre. I ended up looking into this whole subject. In fact, I was at one point because I was friends with Nick DeVere. For a while, I was actually the head of the Dragon Court. He called himself the Sovereign, and he was over me. But he basically wanted me to sort of deal with the public for him because he didn't want to have to deal with the public. So he made me the leader, and then I tried to sort of administrate and do PR for them for a while, but it ended up falling apart. I mean, I don't even know my genealogy.
I was going to say, do you have connections through our bloodlines?
I don't know. He kept thinking that I was, like, he thought because of the way I looked and my interests that I must be part of the bloodline. But so Nicholas DeVere would repeatedly ask me to send him a vial of my blood that a doctor would take, and then he would have it, tested to see if I was part of the dragon line, bloodline as they call it. Anyway, so back to the Prince Michael guy. I had, of course, some inside knowledge about this stuff because of my friends in the Dragon Court, but also I did a little bit of research on my own. He's a very interesting character, and so the people around him are very interesting. By researching him, I found out there's this whole nexus between fake royal families and real royal families. A lot of these people know each other and hang out together. And by fake, I mean just there are all of these groups. Dragon Court is one of them, but there's several that they claim to be about a royal family. That when you look at it, when you look at these people, there's not a lot of evidence to back up their claims of their genealogy, and the people that gave them their titles or the organizations that gave them their titles are not considered historic and accredited. Right. So there's all these sort of fake royals running around selling titles to each other and to other people. Right. And then there's the real ones. But what's weird is the real ones and the fake ones know each other a lot of times and are friends. And the other confluence that's part of this nexus is the intelligence community. So a lot of the people that are part of either one of those groups are also part of the intelligence community around the world. Then there's this other aspect to it. Secret societies, and occultism. So I ended up finding, for instance, there's this group called the IBSSA. It stands for a Slovenian phrase, I think, but when you translate it, it's a security and bodyguard organization.
Right. That's interesting.
When you look at this group, every one of its leaders is part of either a fake royal family or a real royal family. And then they have photographs of all of their events and things that they, parties and things that they do. Right. And a lot of the times these guys are wearing regalia of royal families or of the Templar groups that they're all members of. And Prince Michael is part of this thing. So, and here's another thing. Okay, a lot of them have NGOs in the UN. They are involved in the United Nations somehow. So I don't know. I through studying the subject, and Prince Michael was sort of my gateway drug that got me into it. I found a underworld that I didn't even know existed, and I don't think most people do.
Yeah. No. Okay. So that is interesting. I have heard stuff before about the fake royalty and the real royalty working together, being friends, and having some kind of, connections. It seems strange to me, but you'd think they wouldn't like each other, but doesn't seem to be that way. Okay, so I'm going to throw a strange theory at you just because I think it'd be interesting to discuss with you because it's fascinating. So, okay, I'm going to guess that you don't know too much about sports and that you're not. You watch sports at all?
No.
Okay, so I have some interest in sports. I was a gymnast, and particularly, I like tennis. Something again about the sacred geometry of space, time, and sound. I don't know, right? Okay, so there's a tennis player. He's number 2 in the world. His name's Andy Murray. He won Wimbledon this year for the second time. He's also won the U.S. Open once. And I have a really interesting theory about him that I've tossed by a few people, and some of them think that might have something to it. So to start at the beginning, he was in the preschool in Dunblane, Scotland, that got shot up, that created all of the gun laws in the UK, basically, that led to disarmament and stuff like that. So that he was in that preschool when he was very young. And he's with tennis. When they compete internationally, they're competing for Great Britain, but he is Scottish. And if you look at him, he has a very interesting background. If you look at him, he looks almost exactly like Prince Charles. The same hairline, same face profile, and he looks an awful lot like Prince William. Okay. His wife, her name is Kim Sears, looks almost exactly like Prince William's wife. All right. And one of the interesting things about Andy Murray is that you never see his father. You see his mother all the time. She was his coach for a while. She's always around at these things. But when he won the U.S. Open, that was the first major he won. The first thing he did is he went and he bought the hotel in Scotland where the Knights Templar performed. And then the next year when he won Wimbledon, Queenie was there and he was knighted. And then he just won Wimbledon again this year, and but the Prince William was there and his wife was there. Prince William and his wife were there, and obviously Andy Murray's wife is there. And it's weird; they look like they could be like twin couples almost, right? And he even acknowledged in the crowd that David Cameron was there and said, "I don't think I would like to be prime minister." Okay, I have this theory, and I can't explain why, but it's one of those things that from observing things, I don't know. One of my interests in sports is to sort of use it as a way of a symbology kind of thing about what's going on geopolitically and in the rest of the world. Okay, so he's been knighted, and he is he looks to me like he's related to royalty, like he could be the illegitimate son of Prince Charles. Yeah, I have the feeling inside of me that if Scotland ever broke off from England, that he would be a king, a possibility as a king of Scotland, an independent monarchy. I mean, I should have thought about it to bring up a picture. If you look at this guy from the side, the hairline, and he's a great tennis player, and he seems to be a reasonably decent person. But it is an odd thing for someone who's just an athlete, okay, to the first thing they do when they win the U.S. Open is to go by the hotel where the Knights Templar was formed. Right?
Yes.
Okay. And when he got married, he got married about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, he got married in like the full like Scottish regalia Templar kind of outfit, like stuff. It is very strange. It's weird. But what I find particularly with tennis, and I got into looking at things, I look at a lot of different things in sports. I mean, I was a gymnast, so with gymnastics, I look at it mostly in terms of possibilities of genetic alteration and transhumanism kind of things going on there to be unable. I mean, if you look at the gymnasts, and this is not me saying bad things about these athletes, I appreciate them and respect them, but the gymnast who's the number 1 in the world right now, you'll all see her in the Olympics in a few weeks. Her name is Simone Biles. It is almost unhuman how much better she is than everybody else. It doesn't seem... Everyone else, even though they're way better than me, I can feel in my body how they're doing what they're doing. I have no way of relating to what's going on, how she's doing gymnastics.
Does she look masculine at all?
Yeah, I mean, she's very small, so she doesn't look masculine in the same way that Serena Williams does.
So she couldn't be a transsexual.
Well, I think, okay, well, let's just get off topic here and go to something else. I think I'm of this.
I didn't mean to change the subject.
No, let's go there. It's a great question. I'm of the opinion I've spent enough time in high-level athletics and then enough time researching things, MK Ultra and things like this. I think there is some kind of intersexed athletic program, sort of experimentation kind of thing going on. And I think that it's, Bruce Jenner is evidence of that, I think. I think Serena Williams is evidence of that. And, I guess I never really thought about it with Simone Biles. She's so small, it's hard to think of it that way. She's 4'8". She's 19 years old and she's 4'8". You know what I mean? She's very tiny. But yeah, when she does gymnastics, it looks more like what it looks like when the men do gymnastics. You know what I mean? She has an incredible amount of very easy power. So anyway, that's why I don't know, getting a little off topic there, but it's something that as I've looked at the things that have gone on with Bruce Jenner, some things with Serena Williams, and just some other athletes, there is something going on that is odd. I think there's odd things going on everywhere. But so I look at gymnastics that way through conspiratorial eyes. I look at baseball and basketball and some of this stuff a lot through similar eyes as the researcher Zachary Hubbard and his research on gematria, and gematria being a language of coding numbers into words, and what is really being mirrored, paralleled, shown in a lot of these sporting stories and sporting events. But then with tennis, I look at it, if you look into the background, a lot of these top players, they have very interesting connections. A lot of them seem to be related in some way to royalty. They seem to have, they seem to be like icons or embodiments of certain principles that I find to be interesting. Like, one of the top players in the world for many years now, his name is Roger Federer. Maybe you've heard of him. And he's from Switzerland, which isn't known as a sports powerhouse, right? But he is in the Rolex. He's in all the Rolex commercials. And the Rolex commercials he's in talk about not just recording history, but creating it. And, he's sort of a timeless kind of player. He's been around for a long time, and he really takes time away from his opponents. He's from Switzerland. Switzerland is also where the CERN is, the Large Hadron Collider, right? They're finding the God particle, but what they're really doing, I think, is sort of trying to rip holes in the fabric of space and time. Okay? Right. So he's from there, and one could say that in tennis, he's a controller of time. You know what I mean? If we look at the United States as being the controller of the military, England as being the controller of the monetary system, London, right, or whatever, and Switzerland would definitely be the controller of time. They have CERN going on there. They're famous for creating watches, which is keep us in this prison of linear time, right? And he seems very... as a representation of that. And then there's two other tennis players from Switzerland that both of their names reference in my head, because again, I told you I like wordplay. So this could be nonsense, but it's fun, so this guy, Stan Wawrinka, Wawrinka, and he's come along and interrupted the party that some of these big tennis players had by winning some majors. And to me, in my head, he's the wrinkle in time. And then there's a girl who came out of Switzerland who just came out of nowhere last year. Her name is Tamaya Baczynski, putting time back into something. So you have someone controlling time, someone wrinkling time, someone putting time back in. This could be nonsense, but these are the things my mind goes to. You have Andy Murray, who has this sort of interesting background, and I've drawn some of these connections. And just the way tennis is, to me, it's like the age-old battle of wills. And I had this suspicion for some reason. I don't know why. I never played tennis. I'm not good at it. I just love watching it. But it has a very historical feel. And I had this sense that tennis is actually something maybe in, back when it was first created, or even now, has some way of influencing decisions that are being made. And I was able to do some research and found something called the tennis court oath. And it was like a pact that was made in a rebellion against some kind of king, monarchy, or whatnot, about how it was made on the tennis court. I don't know if it was made through a match or it was just made because they were gathering there. But something changed significantly in that monarchy after that happened. I couldn't find a lot of information about it. There's very few references to it, but this is just some of the nonsense that I like to indulge, that I find that I draw lines to. But the thing with Andy Murray is pretty interesting. If you get a chance sometime, just go look at it. And I was talking about it with somebody on the same day that I saw your blog about Prince Michael. So okay. not having a reference, maybe it's not that interesting to you, but I just find it, I don't know, I find it fascinating. The other thing I've tracked is, there's obviously a lot of interesting cultural symbolism going on through people like Serena Williams. I don't know, you don't follow it. There's
I'm sorry. Yeah. I know who she is. I know she's a tennis.
Yeah. So yeah, this is out of your wheel. But I guess maybe like in a similar way, it's different, but just how all these things going on, you can draw back on these esoteric things. I see symbolism in pop culture and in sports of the things that are going on, like the micro of the macro or whatever. And I just
okay, if we're going to take anything seriously that Prince said about the test, that they're running the entertainment industry because that somehow is integral to the tests that they're doing. Yeah. Well, sports is probably part of that too. So maybe these people are, have the settlers on too. And they have to, win a certain number of games or else, I don't know. I know that, actually this ties in. Okay. I saw something about how the Saudis had been involved in the soccer rigging scandal.
Yes.
Did you hear about that? Not this. I know you heard about the soccer scandal, but did you hear about the Saudi aspect of it?
No. So tell me a little bit about that.
I mean, that's all I know is that. I mean, I just remember seeing it, and I didn't get a chance to like really dig into it. But it just made me think, wow, these guys are involved in everything. Maybe Prince is right.
Well, this year there was a tennis rigging scandal too. There was a tennis rigging scandal. There's been before, but a bigger deal was made out of it this year. There's also a big doping scandal going on in tennis with Maria Sharapova having, she's suspended right now. But yeah, okay, so that is interesting. So the soccer thing, I'm not a fan of soccer. Where I work in a Peruvian restaurant, so there are people there really into soccer. And so it's on, and there's a lot of these scandals with FIFA and whatnot. And it seems to me, I'm sure I know all sports are rigged, but they don't have quite the level of control over soccer that they have over football, baseball, basketball, and probably tennis. And it seems to me that like a lot of these scandals that are going on are almost to try and force a takeover where they'd be able to sort of control. If you look at, I don't know how it goes for soccer, but if you look on the back of tickets for some of these sporting events, it says that it's entertainment. You know what I mean? And,
kind of the way wrestling is entertainment?
Absolutely. And so I'm wondering, and just obviously we know about contracts in the entertainment industry, but it is my opinion, I watch some baseball with my father, I watch a lot of tennis, I watch a lot of sports, that there is a lot of fixing going on. It's not ubiquitous. It's not everywhere. But I think it's in certain situations and whatnot. And sometimes it isn't even fixing about who wins as it is about fixing what the numbers will be related to it because they're sending symbols. Zachary Hubbard's work is amazing on that with the gematria. But so it's trying to fix certain numbers and an outcome. But I'm wondering if a lot of these athletes in their contract, the reason they all have talent agents and contracts like this is to basically say, look, you're going to get to do all this stuff. You're going to get all these advantages. Sometimes it's going to go away that doesn't seem right. And you just got to go with that.
I can totally see that. I think you're probably right. This is one of the reasons why I have never tried to get back into sports. I mean, I was a Royals baseball fan when I was a kid, and then I kind of got out of it. But yeah, I mean, I've been aware that all these sports are rigged for so long. Yeah, that I can't take it seriously. But I wonder. I mean, how it's almost like you have to. This is the future of sports, because if you think about it, how can you ever have a fair contest in the future? I mean, they're trying to control doping, which is just people trying to improve their performance somehow. A person, as we were mentioning before, the transgender subject, there are people trying to sort of sneak in, to compete with, people of their same gender when they have changed their gender. Yeah. And there have been cases where, I think there was a case of a woman in a women's boxing match who almost killed the other woman. Yeah. She, had, still the residual power in her body of a man. And then there's people in the running sports that I know have actually, they're open about it. And, the challenge is there. Is anyone going to do anything about it? Is anyone going to say this isn't fair? Then, of course, you have all of the transhumanist body modification that's going to be, that is the wave of the future. That's going to be huge. So how can you have a fair contest? Yeah, there's part of me that thinks that there's a level of that already going on. That I think in some ways, like this transgenderism is being pushed as the first step towards transhumanism to a certain extent. Okay. Also, like if you remember in the last Olympics,
There was that runner, Oscar Pistorius, who was missing his leg, who's very high ranked and did very well, and then got in trouble and like killed his girlfriend or something weird like that. I think some of this, in the last few Olympics, there's been some of this introduction of people who are missing body parts into the Olympics. Mm-hmm. And to me, it almost seems unattainable that they'd be able to reach that level if there wasn't some further level of transhumanism accompanying that. You know what I mean?
Or it could just be, if you've got fake legs, then you're not going to feel the pain in your legs.
Yeah.
So you can endure more because of that. Or maybe they're, stronger than the biological legs.
Yeah.
I can see many different ways that this can go. But yeah, I mean, how far are we off from, being able to have basically motorized legs that will make you run like a cheetah? Right. Not very far, I don't think.
So we have you see all those like weird like horse robots that DARPA works on for like soldier battlefield stuff. Yeah, it is kind of like, I mean, and you see some of these athletes do almost look not human. You know what I mean? They do, like they have qualities about them that are reminiscent of either being mechanized or of being animal.
Well, you know what I mean. I can't be shocked by anything anymore. Everything, the things that I learn on a daily basis are so amazing that anything is possible. So if you prove to me sometime in the future that several known athletes are not at all who they say they are, and they've got, fake body parts that are giving them an advantage, or if they're, pretending to be something biologically that they're not, it's not going to surprise me at all. I mean, I've not been one to glom onto these crisis actor stories saying that everything in the news is fake. And, but, I actually, it's believable. So, just prove it to me and I'll believe it, because that's all it takes. I don't find it that hard to that, and also that, then also that possibility of MK Ultra athletes and Manchurian candidate kind of athletes. I mean, to me, that seems like a perfect place to practice with that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? I'll just say this because I know we're about to end, but if you think about what Prince said about the ratings of, he talked about the test. He said that people are beholden to the settlers due to the ratings that they get. Well, I had assumed we're talking about terrestrial radio, terrestrial television. What if we're not? We're the show. And it's the ratings that we generate through our behavior that gets us rewarded or punished by the test.
We're always hearing about how everyone else and everything else out there is always looking at us and very interested in what we're doing. And Marilyn Manson told us we're all stars in the dope show. So, right? So, Tracy Twyman, I want to thank you for going all over the place in this conversation and engaging me in some fun topics and some nonsense and also some very serious and interesting stuff. And I hope you enjoyed it. And
I did.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, you're cool.
No, I enjoyed this conversation. It was good.
For sure. And definitely would love to have you back sometime to talk about one of your books or whatnot, when Randy can join us, because I know he'd have some interesting questions for you. And thank you so much for doing this. And,
sure, thank you.
Anything else you want to say?
That's it. Buy my books.
All right. All right. On the way out, we're going to listen to the track Prism by the artist Scan X off of Heart House Records. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good one. The truth is out there. It's inside of you. Find it. Take it easy, guys.